The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of destiny and power. For thousands of generations, the Jedi have served as its guardians, interpreting its will and maintaining balance. But what happens when something arrives that operates entirely outside the Force, a vessel from beyond the stars carrying principles and technology that answer to no mystical energy field, no ancient prophecy, no midichlorian count? What happens when rational minds built on choice and scientific law collide with a galaxy drowning in a war orchestrated by darkness itself? The space above Coruscant tore open like a wound in reality. It wasn't a hyperspace signature. Every sensor operator in Republic Fleet Command confirmed that immediately. No ship emerged from the familiar tunnel of blue-white light that marked faster-than-light travel. Instead, subspace itself seemed to fracture, spilling exotic particles that registered on no known scale. The anomaly twisted, expanded, and from its heart came something impossible. The USS Enterprise NCC-1701-D materialized in the Coruscant system like a visiting cathedral, its saucer section gleaming under the light of the capital world sun. 24 decks. 641 meters of duranium composite and transparent aluminum. A vessel designed for exploration and diplomacy, now hovering in the middle of the largest space battle the Republic had seen in months. On the bridge, Captain Jean-Luc Picard gripped the armrests of his command chair as the ship shuddered. Red alert klaxons wailed. The viewscreen showed a scene of utter chaos, angular gray warships exchanging emerald and crimson energy bolts with sleeker vessels marked by Republic insignia. Explosions blossomed silently in the void. Debris tumbled past the Enterprise's deflector shields. Report. Picard's voice cut through the alarm. Commander Data's fingers flew across the ops console, his positronic brain processing information faster than any organic mind could manage. We have experienced a catastrophic subspace inversion, Captain. Our position is unknown. Star charts do not match any Federation database. The warp core is offline, dimensional physics appear fundamentally altered. I am detecting energy signatures inconsistent with known technology. Shields at 70%, Lieutenant Worf announced from Tactical, his Klingon features set in a warrior's scowl. We are being scanned by multiple vessels. They are powering weapons. Counselor Deanna Troi leaned forward in her seat beside the captain, her empathic senses overwhelmed. Captain, I'm sensing millions of minds. Fear. Determination. And something else, something I've never felt before. Like an undercurrent beneath everything. Picard's eyes narrowed. 20 years in Starfleet had taught him that first contact scenarios could turn deadly in seconds. Hail them. All frequencies. Standard first contact protocols. Channel open, sir, came the reply from the communications station. This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration. We mean no harm and request immediate communication to resolve our unexpected arrival. The response came within seconds, but not as Picard expected. A holographic image materialized in the center of the bridge, not on their viewscreen, but actually projected into their space. A young human male in military uniform appeared, his face bearing the strain of combat command. Unidentified vessel, this is Admiral Tarkin of the Republic Navy. You have emerged in the middle of a battle zone. State your allegiance, Republic or Separatist, and transmit your access codes immediately or you will be fired upon. Commander Riker rose from his chair. Republic? Separatist? Captain, we have no context for. I understand your confusion, Picard said calmly. Addressing the hologram, but we are affiliated with neither party. We are representatives of the United Federation of Planets, an organization dedicated to peaceful exploration and... The hologram flickered. Unknown designation. Your vessel's energy signature does not match any registered Republic or Confederacy design. You will submit to boarding and inspection, or... The transmission cut off as the Enterprise rocked violently. Worf's console screamed warnings. We are under fire. Weapons impact on forward shields, some kind of plasma-based energy torpedo. Shields holding at 62%. Picard's jaw tightened. Evasive maneuvers. Do not return fire. Mr. Data, can you identify the attacking vessels? Analyzing, Captain. Data's golden eyes reflected the tactical display. The attacking ships are droid-controlled fighters, no life signs aboard. They appear to be launched from the angular capital ships engaging the sleeker vessels. Weaponry is primitive by Federation standards but numerous. I am also detecting what appears to be directed energy beams, coherent plasma contained in magnetic fields. Lasers? Geordi LaForge's voice came from engineering through the comm. Captain, our shields weren't designed for this kind of. Another impact. The bridge lights flickered. Shields at 58%, Worf growled. Captain, I recommend we return fire. A single photon torpedo spread would eliminate the attacking craft. Picard stood, his posture rigid with command authority. Absolutely not, Mr. Worf. We will not open fire on vessels whose political allegiance we don't understand in a conflict we know nothing about. Helm, get us clear of the battle. Full impulse. The Enterprise's impulse engines flared, and the massive starship accelerated away from the engagement with startling speed, far faster than anything the Clone Wars had ever produced. Within seconds, they'd cleared the combat zone, leaving confused Republic and Separatist forces in their wake. Data tilted his head, a gesture he'd learned to indicate curiosity. Captain, I am detecting a massive planetary installation ahead. It appears to be an ecumenopolis, a city-world covering the entire planet's surface. Population readings are extraordinary. Approximately 1 trillion sentient beings. Picard moved to stand behind Data's station, studying the readings. Coruscant filled the view screen, a glittering jewel of lights and towering spires. It was beautiful. It was also unlike anything in Federation space, a monument to civilization that had endured for millennia. A city covering an entire planet, Riker breathed. The engineering alone. Captain, Troy said softly, I'm sensing something from that world. Not just the minds of its inhabitants, but something deeper. Older. Like the planet itself is aware. Before Picard could respond, Worf announced, we are being hailed. Multiple sources. The largest signal identifies itself as the Jedi Temple. Picard straightened his uniform. The word Jedi meant nothing to him, but the formal nature of the contact suggested authority. On screen, Mr. Worf. The view screen shimmered, and Captain Jean-Luc Picard found himself looking at a sight that would forever change both his understanding of the universe and the course of the Clone Wars itself. A robed figure appeared, elderly, green-skinned, with large eyes that seemed to perceive far more than physical sight should allow. When the being spoke, its syntax was inverted, its tone ancient and knowing. Captain Picard, the figure said, leaning on a small cane. Arrive in our galaxy you have. Much to discuss, we do. To the Jedi Temple, come. Many questions, both of us have. Picard glanced at Data, who gave a microscopic shrug. Even the android's vast computational power couldn't explain what they were witnessing. The captain turned back to the view screen and did what he always did when facing the unknown. He chose diplomacy. We accept your invitation, Picard said. We have many questions of our own. The hologram nodded slowly. Master Yoda, I am. Changed, this galaxy has been by your arrival. Know this, you do not yet. But soon, understand you will. The transmission ended, leaving the Enterprise bridge crew in stunned silence. They had traveled beyond the bounds of their universe into a galaxy at war, carrying technology and ideals that this civilization had never encountered. The Prime Directive, Starfleet's sacred principle of non-interference, had just collided with a reality where choosing sides might be the only way to survive. And in the depths of the Jedi Temple, Master Yoda closed his eyes and reached out through the Force, searching for any trace of these newcomers in its infinite web. He found nothing. The Enterprise and its crew existed outside the Force entirely, a blind spot in the fabric of destiny itself. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The Jedi Temple rose from Coruscant's surface like a monument to eternity itself, 5 towering spires reaching toward the sky, their ancient stone weathered by millennia of galactic history. The Enterprise settled into a high orbit above the Ecumenopolis, maintaining position while a Republic shuttle carried Captain Picard, Commander Data, Counselor Troi, and Lieutenant Worf down to the surface. The away team had debated bringing security, but Picard had insisted on limiting their presence. First contact required trust, not a show of force. The shuttle descended through Coruscant's endless traffic lanes, passing between buildings that stretched kilometers into the sky. Worf kept his hand near his phaser, scanning every speeder that came within 100 meters. Data's eyes tracked everything, cataloging architectural styles and energy signatures with machine precision. Troi sat quietly, her empathic senses drinking in the emotional landscape of a trillion souls living in compressed urban sprawl. "Captain," she said softly, "the emotional texture of this world is unlike anything I've encountered. There's fear, yes, and the stress of war. But underneath it all, there's this current, this constant hum of something that connects everyone. It's not telepathy, not exactly, but it's similar." Picard nodded. Master Yoda mentioned the Force. "Perhaps that's what you're sensing." The Force. Data turned the words over, his linguistic subroutines analyzing their contextual usage. In our brief communication intercepts during the battle, the term appeared 17 times across various channels. It appears to be a fundamental concept in this civilization's worldview, though its precise nature remains unclear. The shuttle touched down on a broad landing platform adjacent to the temple's main entrance. The 4 Starfleet officers emerged, their uniforms marking them as unmistakably foreign in a galaxy that had never seen their like. Waiting for them was a reception committee that would have seemed impossible mere hours ago. Master Yoda stood at the center, flanked by 2 other Jedi. To his right was a tall, bearded human with kind eyes and an air of diplomatic grace, later introduced as Obi-Wan Kenobi. To his left stood a severe-looking man with dark skin and an expression of deep skepticism, Mace Windu. Behind them, a dozen other Jedi Council members observed with varying degrees of curiosity and concern. "Welcome to the Jedi Temple," Obi-Wan said, stepping forward with a slight bow. "Master Yoda has requested that we extend every courtesy. Your arrival has been unprecedented." Picard returned the bow, recognizing the gesture's diplomatic significance. "Master Yoda, Master Kenobi. I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the United Federation of Planets. My crew and I are grateful for your hospitality, though I must confess we are as confused by our presence here as you must be." Mace Windu's eyes narrowed. "Confused. That's one word for it. Your ship appears in the middle of a battle, ignores Republic military authority, and claims to represent an organization none of our databases recognize. The Senate is calling you either a separatist trick or a threat we haven't yet identified." "Patience, Master Windu," Yoda said, tapping his cane against the stone. "Sense their intent through the Force, we cannot. Avoid they are, empty space where life should resonate. Disturbing, this is. But hostile? No. Feel it, I do not." Worf's hand moved fractionally closer to his phaser. Data noticed but said nothing. Troi stepped forward. "Master Yoda, you say you cannot sense us through the Force. I'm an empath, I can sense emotions in others. But when I reach out to you, I feel something similar to what you describe. A presence that exists on a level my telepathic abilities cannot fully access. Perhaps we exist on different frequencies." The Jedi exchanged glances. It was Obi-Wan who spoke, his tone thoughtful. "An intriguing theory. The Force binds all living things in this galaxy. Every sentient being has midichlorians in their cells, microscopic organisms that allow us to touch the Force. But you, he trailed off, uncertain. We have no midichlorians, Data said simply. I have completed a preliminary medical scan. Our cellular structure is fundamentally compatible with the humanoid life forms we've observed, but we lack this symbiotic organism entirely. In essence, we are biologically invisible to your Force. The statement landed like a seismic charge. Several Jedi took an involuntary step back. Mace Windu's hand moved to his lightsaber, not threateningly, but reflexively, seeking reassurance from a weapon that had always guided his path. Impossible, Windu said flatly. The Force is in all living things. It's not a matter of belief or biology, it's the fundamental fabric of existence itself. Picard chose his words carefully. In our experience, Master Windu, the universe is vast enough to contain many fundamental fabrics. Where we come from, we have no Force. We have subspace, quantum mechanics, and principles of physics that allow for faster-than-light travel and matter-energy conversion. Perhaps your Force and our science are simply different expressions of reality's deeper truths. Yoda's ears twitched. Wise words, Captain. But dangerous, too. For millennia, the Force has guided the Jedi. Prophecy speaks of balance, of a chosen one who will bring light to darkness. But you? In our visions, you do not appear. In the Force's great pattern, you are threads that should not exist. Then perhaps, Picard said quietly, we represent something your prophecies did not account for. Free will. Choice unconstrained by destiny. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Obi-Wan shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the philosophical knife's edge they were walking. The Jedi had always believed the Force guided them toward wisdom, that the path of light and dark was written in cosmic destiny. But here stood beings who claimed no such connection, who made their choices without the Force's guidance. Tell us about this war, Picard continued, changing the subject to more concrete matters. When we arrived, we found ourselves in the middle of a battle. Master Kenobi, your Republic is fighting. Separatists? Obi-Wan nodded, gesturing for them to walk. The group moved into the temple, passing through halls lined with statues of ancient Jedi masters. 3 years ago, a former Jedi named Count Dooku led thousands of star systems in secession from the Galactic Republic. They claim the Republic has become corrupt, bureaucratic, bloated beyond function. They're not entirely wrong. But their solution, the Confederacy of Independent Systems, is backed by corporate interests. The Trade Federation, the Banking Clan, the Techno Union. It's a war fought as much over economics as ideology. Data processed this instantly. A civil war driven by systemic governmental failure and corporate manipulation. In Federation history, we have encountered similar conflicts. They rarely end well without addressing the underlying structural problems. Mace Windu shot him a sharp look. The Republic has stood for 1,000 generations. Its problems can be reformed from within, not torn down by secessionists and their droid armies. And yet, Picard said carefully, you acknowledge corruption exists. Master Windu, in my experience, war often serves to distract from difficult questions about power's legitimacy. They entered a vast circular chamber, the Jedi Council room. Tall windows overlooked Coruscant's endless cityscape. Seats arranged in a circle marked where the galaxy's wisest Force users gathered to make decisions that shaped civilization itself. But today, half those seats were empty. Many Jedi were off-world, serving as generals in a war that had militarized an order of peacekeepers. Yoda settled into his seat with a heavy sigh. Ask your questions, Captain. Many, you must have. Picard looked at each council member in turn before speaking. Why are the Jedi fighting this war? You describe yourselves as peacekeepers, yet Master Kenobi mentioned Jedi serving as generals. In the Federation, we have a clear separation between our exploratory mandate and Starfleet's defensive role. It seems you've blurred that line. Obi-Wan's expression tightened, it was a question that had troubled him for 3 years. When the war began, the Republic had no standing military. The Jedi were asked, compelled, really, to lead the clone army that mysteriously appeared just when we needed it most. We took on this role to prevent greater catastrophe. The clone army, Data interjected. I detected unusual genetic uniformity among the Republic forces we observed. They are artificial soldiers. Clones of a single template, Mace Windu confirmed. Jango Fett, a Mandalorian bounty hunter. Commissioned in secret 10 years ago by a Jedi Master who died before explaining his actions. They are efficient, loyal, and created specifically for war. Worf's growl was low and dangerous. You fight with slaves. The Jedi Council stirred uncomfortably. It was Obi-Wan who answered, his voice strained. They're not slaves. They're soldiers. They choose to fight. Do they? Picard's voice was gentle but uncompromising. If they were created for a single purpose and given no alternative, Master Kenobi, can we truly call that choice? In the Federation, creating sentient beings as instruments of war is considered one of the gravest ethical violations. Troy spoke up, her empathic senses reading the room. They're troubled by this. The Jedi feel the weight of the choice they made, the compromise with their principles. But they also believe the alternative would have been worse. Yoda closed his eyes. Right, the Counselor is. Dark times, these are. Made choices we have that haunt us. But without the Jedi, the Republic would have fallen. Billions would have died. Easy answers, the Force does not provide. Picard felt a deep sympathy for these warrior monks, trapped in an impossible situation. Master Yoda, we find ourselves in a delicate position. Starfleet's Prime Directive, our most sacred law, prohibits interference in the internal affairs of other civilizations. Yet we are stranded here, seemingly unable to return home. My warp drive operates on principles incompatible with your hyperspace technology. We are outsiders with nowhere else to go. Data added, our analysis suggests that our subspace tear was a one-way phenomenon. Without understanding the dimensional mechanics that brought us here, replicating the journey home may be impossible. Mace Windu leaned forward. Your ship. We've analyzed the sensor data from your arrival. Your vessel moved faster than anything we've ever encountered using sublight engines. Your shields absorbed attacks that would have destroyed most capital ships. And our intelligence suggests you have weapons you didn't deploy. Captain Picard, your technology could change the balance of this war. Which is precisely why we cannot offer it, Picard said firmly. Master Windu, I understand the temptation. But my crew and I did not come here to choose sides in your conflict. We came here by accident. To involve ourselves militarily would be to impose our will on your galaxy's natural development. Natural development? Mace's voice rose. Captain, millions are dying. The Separatists are led by a Sith Lord, an enemy of everything the Jedi represent. This isn't some primitive culture squabbling over territory. This is civilization itself under threat. A Sith Lord? Data's positronic brain flagged the term immediately. Please elaborate. Yoda's expression darkened. Ancient enemies of the Jedi, the Sith are. Draw power from the dark side of the Force, from anger, hatred, fear. For a millennium, believed extinct they were. But return they have, in the form of Count Dooku. Darth Tyrannus, his Sith name is. Picard absorbed this new information, his strategic mind racing. A civil war orchestrated by a dark mystic order thought destroyed. Clone soldiers created under mysterious circumstances. Jedi peacekeepers turned generals. The Republic's corruption acknowledged by its own defenders. Every piece of information suggested layers of manipulation that no one fully understood. Master Yoda, Picard said slowly, has it occurred to you that this war might be serving someone's purpose? That perhaps both sides are being maneuvered? The ancient Jedi Master opened his eyes, and for a moment, Picard saw something terrible in that gaze, fear, and the bitter knowledge of suspicions that could not be proven. "Occurred to us, it has," Yoda said quietly. "Clouded, the future is. Sense a great darkness, we do, but its source remains hidden. If right you are, Captain, then pawns we all may be. Including you." The chamber fell silent. Outside the windows, Coruscant glittered in the setting sun, a city world oblivious to the conversation happening in its ancient temple. The Enterprise hung in orbit above, a ship from another reality carrying principles that might not survive contact with a galaxy at war. Picard straightened. "Then perhaps, Masters, our arrival is not the accident it appears. Perhaps it's an opportunity, for all of us, to question assumptions and seek truth beyond what prophecy and politics have allowed you to see." Obi-Wan smiled slightly. "Captain, you're either very wise or very naive. I haven't decided which." "In my experience, Master Kenobi," Picard replied, "wisdom often begins with admitting how little we truly understand." The Enterprise's science lab hummed with activity as Commander Data stood before a holographic display showing cellular structures magnified 10,000 times. Dr. Beverly Crusher watched over his shoulder, her medical tricorder analyzing samples they'd collected from the Jedi Temple's medical wing, samples freely offered after Picard had explained their scientific curiosity. What they'd discovered in the past 6 hours had fundamentally challenged everything Starfleet knew about biology, consciousness, and the nature of existence itself. "It's remarkable," Crusher said, adjusting the display to highlight microscopic organisms swimming through Coruscant human cells. "Midichlorians. They're not parasitic, not exactly symbiotic in the traditional sense. They exist in a state of quantum entanglement with their host's nervous system, creating what appears to be a biological subspace field." Data tilted his head, processing the implications. "Doctor, your comparison to subspace is apartment. These organisms generate a field effect that my sensors can detect but cannot fully analyze. It is as though they exist partially in our dimension and partially in another, one that the inhabitants of this galaxy call the Force. And we don't have them," Crusher said, pulling up a comparison scan of her own cells. "Not a single midichlorian. Which means we're completely isolated from this force that permeates everything here. We're ghosts, Data. We exist in their reality but not in their spiritual dimension, for lack of a better term." Data's golden eyes reflected the holographic display. "The philosophical implications are profound, Doctor. If the Force truly connects all life in this galaxy and provides guidance through what they call Force sensitivity, then free will as we understand it may be compromised. The Jedi claim the Force guides them toward proper action. But if a field effect generated by microscopic organisms is influencing their decision-making processes at a neurological level, are they truly making independent choices?" Crusher opened her mouth to respond but was interrupted by Picard's voice over the comm system. "Data, report to the observation lounge immediately. We have a situation." The android and the doctor exchanged glances before Data tapped his comm badge. "On my way, Captain." 3 decks above, the Enterprise's observation lounge had been transformed into an improvised diplomatic chamber. Picard sat at the head of the conference table, his expression grave. Commander Riker stood by the windows, watching Republic cruisers maintain a respectful but obvious perimeter around the Enterprise. Counselor Troi occupied her usual seat, while Geordi LaForge had been called up from engineering. At the far end of the table, displayed on the view screen, was a holographic transmission showing someone they hadn't met yet. The figure was tall, elegant, with a white beard and curved lightsaber hilt visible at his belt. His eyes held a sophisticated intelligence that immediately put Data on guard. This was not a warrior monk like the Jedi they'd met. This was a politician, a manipulator, someone who understood power's subtle mechanisms. "Commander Data," Picard said formally, "allow me to introduce Count Dooku, or as the Jedi know him, Darth Tyrannus, leader of the Confederacy of Independent Systems." Data processed this instantly. The enemy leader had contacted them directly. Protocol suggested treating this as a hostile overture, yet Picard's body language indicated he'd been engaged in conversation for some time. The captain was gathering intelligence. Dooku smiled, a gesture that seemed genuinely warm despite the circumstances. Commander Data. I've heard fascinating reports about you. An artificial being with full sentience, capable of independent thought and moral reasoning. In this galaxy, droids are servants, useful tools, but not considered truly alive. Yet you stand as proof that consciousness can exist without the Force. Remarkable. I am a Starfleet officer, Data replied carefully, taking his seat. My positronic brain allows for processing capabilities beyond organic cognition, but I do not consider myself superior to biological life forms. Merely different. Different indeed, Dooku said, leaning forward in his holographic form. As is your entire crew, Commander. You exist outside the Force, a feat I would have considered impossible until your arrival. Do you understand what that means? For 10,000 generations, the Jedi have claimed that the Force binds all things, that their connection to it grants them wisdom and authority. Yet here you stand, proof that life, sentient, moral, reasoning life, can exist entirely independent of their mystical energy field. Riker crossed his arms. Count Dooku, you contacted us under a flag of truce claiming you had information the Republic was hiding from us. So far, all you've done is philosophize about the Force. Get to the point. Dooku's smile didn't waver, but his eyes sharpened. Very well, Commander. Direct and to the point, I appreciate that. Captain Picard, your crew has spent several hours with the Jedi Council. They've told you about the war, about the separatist threat, about the noble Republic fighting to preserve democracy. What they haven't told you is who's really in control. Picard's fingers steepled. Continue. The Republic is governed by the Galactic Senate, thousands of representatives from across the galaxy, all beholden to special interests, corporate lobbies, and bureaucratic inertia. 3 years ago, they voted emergency powers to Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, ostensibly to deal with the separatist crisis. Those emergency powers have never been rescinded. Palpatine now commands authority that no Chancellor has held in a millennium. The Jedi serve him without question, having become his military commanders. And every month, he consolidates more control under the guise of security. Troy spoke up, her empathic senses focused intently on the hologram. You're suggesting the Republic is sliding toward dictatorship. I'm not suggesting it, Counselor, I'm stating it as fact. The Republic my former students now defend is not the democracy they believe it to be. It's a corrupt, bloated institution that serves the core worlds while exploitation ravages the outer rim. The Confederacy seeks independence not out of greed, but out of necessity. We want the right to govern ourselves without Coruscant's interference. Data interjected, yet your Confederacy is backed by corporate entities, the Trade Federation, the Banking Clan, the Techno Union. Organizations whose profit motives are well documented. How can you claim moral authority when your movement is funded by the very exploitation you claim to oppose? Dooku's expression showed genuine respect for the question. A fair criticism, Commander. Yes, corporate interests support the Confederacy. But they do so because the Republic's taxation and regulation threaten their operations. In a true free market of systems, those same corporations would be subject to competition and local oversight. The difference is choice, systems choosing their own economic models rather than having them imposed by distant bureaucrats. That's a libertarian fantasy, Riker said bluntly. We've seen it before. Unregulated corporate power doesn't lead to freedom, it leads to exploitation of whoever can't defend themselves. Perhaps, Dooku acknowledged. But is that worse than the Republic's current model? Captain Picard, I've studied your vessel's transmissions, what little we've been able to decode. Your Federation operates on post-scarcity principles, replicator technology that can create material goods from energy. You've eliminated want, and with it, most economic conflict. But this galaxy has no such technology. Here, resources are finite, and the Republic's central control means those resources flow to those with political connections. The outer rim starves while Coruscant glitters. Picard leaned back, recognizing the rhetorical trap being laid. Dooku was appealing to Federation values, self-determination, opposition to exploitation, skepticism of concentrated power. But there was something else beneath the words, something Picard couldn't quite identify. Count Dooku, you mentioned the Jedi are hiding something. What specifically? The Count's eyes glittered. The clone army. The Jedi told you it was commissioned by a dead master, mysteriously appearing just when needed. But they didn't tell you about Kamino, the cloning facilities that produced this army. Nor did they mention that the clones have behavioral modification chips implanted in their brains, capable of overriding their free will with direct commands. The observation lounge went silent. Data's processors flagged this as critically important information. Crusher's voice came over the comm. Captain, I'm accessing the medical data the Jedi shared. Running a search for, my God. He's right. There are inhibitor chips documented in the clone medical files. The Jedi records describe them as tumor prevention, but the neural architecture is wrong for that purpose. These chips interface directly with the aggression and obedience centers of the brain. Geordi's visor flickered as he processed the implications. Captain, if those chips can override free will, then the entire Republic military could be activated like weapons. Programmed weapons pointed at whoever holds the activation codes. Dooku nodded slowly. Now you begin to understand, Commander LaForge. The Jedi lead an army of slaves, programmed for perfect obedience. And they never questioned where this army came from or who truly controls it. They simply accepted a gift that arrived at the perfect moment. Does that sound like wisdom to you? Or does it sound like manipulation? Picard's mind raced through the implications. If Dooku was telling the truth, and Data's analysis of the medical files suggested he was, then the Republic's entire military structure was built on a foundation of slavery and mind control. The Jedi, for all their talk of peace and justice, commanded an army that violated every principle the Federation held sacred. But Dooku had his own agenda. The Sith Lord, and Picard did not forget that title, was not sharing this information out of altruism. He was attempting to drive a wedge between the Enterprise and the Jedi, to position the Confederacy as the rational alternative. Count Dooku, Picard said carefully, you've given us much to consider. But I notice you've said nothing about your own relationship with the Sith. The Jedi claim you draw power from the dark side of the Force, from hatred and fear. How do you reconcile that with your claims of moral superiority? For the first time, Dooku's diplomatic mask slipped slightly. The Jedi teach that the dark side is evil, that passion and emotion lead only to suffering. But what is the alternative? Suppression of feeling? Denial of one's nature? The Jedi preach compassion yet forbid attachment. They speak of peace while leading armies. Their hypocrisy is built into their philosophy. Data leaned forward. You did not answer the captain's question, Count. You merely deflected by attacking the Jedi. If you draw power from negative emotions, how can we trust that your judgment is not compromised by those same emotions? Dooku's eyes locked on Data's artificial gaze, and something like genuine curiosity flickered there. Commander, you are a being of pure logic, unclouded by the Force. Let me pose a question. If someone threatened those you cared about, your crew, your captain, would you not feel anger? Would you not draw upon that anger to protect them? The dark side is not evil, it is honest. It acknowledges what the Jedi deny, that passion, even anger, can be a tool for justice. That, Picard said quietly, is the oldest justification for tyranny ever conceived. The ends justify the means. Anger in service of a righteous cause. Count, I've lived long enough to know that philosophy leads only to atrocity. Dooku studied Picard for a long moment, his sophisticated mind clearly reassessing the Federation captain. Perhaps you're right, Captain. Or perhaps you simply haven't faced the kinds of choices this galaxy demands. But I've said what I came to say. The Republic is not what the Jedi claim. The clone army is a trap waiting to spring. And your arrival, beings outside the Force, outside prophecy, represents a variable that neither the Jedi nor my separatist allies anticipated. Your separatist allies, Riker repeated. Not you. A thin smile. Commander, I am many things, but I am not the Confederacy's only leader. There are other interests at play. Forces even I do not fully control. Which brings me to my warning, Captain Picard, your technology represents a threat to the balance of power in this galaxy. Both the Republic and the Confederacy will attempt to acquire it, by trade if possible, by force if necessary. But there is a third party, one the Jedi suspect but cannot prove, who will see you as a threat to plans centuries in the making. Who? Troy demanded. Dooku's hologram began to flicker, the transmission degrading. Ask the Jedi about their precious prophecy, Counselor. Ask them about the Chosen One and what balance truly means. And Captain, when you discover the truth about who's orchestrating this war, remember that the Confederacy offered you honesty while the Republic offered you platitudes. The transmission cut off, leaving the Enterprise senior staff in stunned silence. Data was the first to speak, his voice analytical but troubled. Captain, I believe we have inadvertently positioned ourselves at the center of a conflict far more complex than a simple civil war. Count Dooku's information about the clone behavioral chips is verifiable and accurate. The Jedi either do not know about them or have chosen not to disclose them. Either possibility is concerning. Picard stood, moving to the window to watch the stars. Number 1, contact the Jedi Council. Tell them we need to discuss the clone army's creation, specifically, the inhibitor chips. And data. Sir. Begin a deep analysis of everything we know about this war. Timeline, key events, who benefits from each development. If Dooku is right and there's a third party manipulating both sides, we need to identify them before we're swept up in their schemes. Captain, Crusher's voice came over the comm again, there's something else. I've been analyzing the Force from a medical standpoint, and I think I know why the Jedi can't sense us. It's not just that we lack midichlorians. It's that our presence creates an interference pattern, a null zone in their Force perception. To them, we're not invisible. We're voids. Shadows where light should be. Troy's eyes widened with understanding. Which means they'll always be uncertain about us. They can't trust their instincts when we're involved because their instincts, the Force, simply doesn't register us. We'll always be unpredictable to them. Picard turned from the window, his decision made. Then we must be very careful, Counselor. Because in a galaxy where prophecy and mystical guidance shape civilizations, being unpredictable makes us either a threat or a wild card. And I'm not certain which is more dangerous. The Jedi Council chamber felt colder when Master Yoda's expression hardened upon hearing about the inhibitor chips. Mace Windu stood abruptly, his hand instinctively moving toward his lightsaber before he caught himself. Obi-Wan Kenobi's diplomatic composure cracked, revealing genuine shock beneath. But it was the silence that followed Picard's revelation that spoke loudest, the silence of beings who prided themselves on wisdom confronting a truth they should have discovered years ago. Known about the chips, we did, Yoda admitted finally, his voice heavy with something that might have been shame. Told they were for behavioral inhibition, to prevent clone aggression, to ensure stability. Questioned them more deeply, we did not. You didn't question them, Riker repeated, his tone carefully neutral but his stance radiating disbelief. You have an army of sentient beings with control chips in their brains, and you didn't question them? Mace Windu's jaw tightened. Commander, we were facing the annihilation of the Republic. The separatist droid army numbered in the quintillions. Without the clone army, billions would have died in the first month of the war. We accepted what the Force provided. The Force provided, Data said, and there was something in his android voice, not quite judgment, but precise analysis that cut deeper than emotion could. Master Windu, from an outside perspective, your statement reveals a fundamental flaw in your decision-making process. You encountered a mystery, an army commissioned by a dead Jedi, appearing at the precise moment of need, with military capabilities far beyond what your Republic could have produced. Rather than investigating this obvious manipulation, you attributed it to cosmic destiny and accepted without scrutiny. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Obi-Wan moved to the window, looking out over Coruscant's glittering expanse. He's right, Masters. We've been so caught up in fighting the war that we stopped asking who started it and why. The Force showed us the path forward, and we assumed that path was righteous. The Force does not lie, Mace insisted, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. Troy stepped forward, her empathic abilities reading the room's emotional landscape. Master Windu, the Force may not lie, but it can be misinterpreted. In my experience, any system of belief that discourages questioning its own premises is vulnerable to exploitation. You felt the clone army was meant to be, so you didn't examine it critically. But what if someone knew you would react that way? What if your trust in the Force was the very thing they counted on? Yoda's ears drooped. Dark, that possibility is. But deny it, I cannot. Captain Picard, Count Dooku contacted you. What else did he say? Picard chose his words with diplomatic precision. He suggested that this war serves a purpose beyond the stated goals of either side. That someone, a third party, is orchestrating events to consolidate power. He implied that your prophecy about the Chosen One and balance in the Force is connected to this manipulation. The Jedi Council members exchanged troubled glances. Finally, Obi-Wan spoke. The prophecy states that a Chosen One will arise, born of no father, who will bring balance to the Force and destroy the Sith. We believed we'd found him, a boy named Anakin Skywalker, discovered on Tatooine 9 years ago. His midichlorian count was beyond anything we'd ever recorded. Master Kagan Jinn believed Anakin was the Chosen One before Kagan was killed by Dooku's master, Darth Maul. And where is this Anakin Skywalker now? Data inquired. Fighting the war, Mace said flatly. He's one of our most effective generals. Reckless, passionate, powerful beyond measure. He's achieved victories that should have been impossible. But he's also troubled. He forms attachments, which the Jedi Code forbids. He's married in secret to Senator Padme Amidala, though he thinks we don't know. Picard's strategic mind seized on this immediately. You know he's violated your code, yet you allow him to continue serving? Obi-Wan's expression was pained. Anakin is my former apprentice, Captain. He's like a brother to me. And yes, we know about Padme. We've chosen to overlook it. Because we need him. Because the war demands compromise. How many other compromises have you made? Riker asked quietly. The question lingered unanswered. Through the council chamber's tall windows, the sun was setting over Coruscant, painting the city world in shades of amber and crimson. Somewhere in that vast urban sprawl, trillions of beings went about their lives, unaware that in this ancient temple, the foundations of their civilization were being questioned by outsiders who existed beyond destiny itself. Masters, Picard said, breaking the silence, I believe we need to establish something clearly. My crew and I are stranded in your galaxy. Our technology operates on principles fundamentally different from yours, and our ability to return home is uncertain at best. We cannot remain neutral forever, our very presence has already altered the political landscape. Count Dooku knows about us. I assume the Republic Senate does as well. Mace nodded. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine has requested an audience. He wants to meet the beings from beyond the galaxy who command a vessel more powerful than anything in the Republic fleet. Of course he does, Geordi muttered from where he stood analyzing a holographic projection of Coruscant's power grid. Captain, I've been scanning this planet's infrastructure. The energy distribution alone is staggering, they're pulling power from a fusion reactor network that makes our impulse engines look primitive. But there's something else. I'm detecting subspace anomalies concentrated around the Senate building. Faint, but consistent with the kind of interference pattern we'd see from. He trailed off, his visor's sensors flickering as he processed the data. Captain, I think someone in the Senate is using technology that creates force interference. Artificial dampening of midichlorian fields. Every Jedi in the chamber stiffened. Yoda's eyes snapped open fully, his ancient face suddenly looking far younger and far more dangerous. Certain of this, are you? As certain as I can be without direct access to the source, Geordi confirmed. Whatever it is, it's sophisticated. It's not blocking the force completely, that would be too obvious. It's more like, static. Background noise that makes it harder to sense clearly. If I had to guess, I'd say it's been active for years. Maybe decades. Mace Windu's hand was now firmly on his lightsaber. Captain Picard, this information, if accurate, suggests that someone within the Republic government has been deliberately clouding the Jedi's force perception. That would explain why we've felt the dark side's presence but been unable to identify its source. We've been sensing through a fog we didn't know existed. Obi-Wan's voice was tight. The Supreme Chancellor. He's been the center of Republic power for 13 years. If someone wanted to hide their intentions from the Jedi while maintaining proximity to galactic affairs. Speculation without evidence is dangerous, Picard cautioned. But it warrants investigation. Master Windu, has Chancellor Palpatine ever been tested for force sensitivity? No, Mace admitted. He's not force sensitive. We would have detected that immediately upon meeting him. Data's head tilted. Unless, Master Windu, he was using the very technology Commander LaForge just detected. A device that dampens force perception would also hide one's own force signature. It would be the perfect camouflage. The implications crashed through the council chamber like a seismic wave. If Palpatine was force sensitive, if he was actively hiding that sensitivity, then the Republic's leader for over a decade could be the very Sith Lord the Jedi had been searching for. The prophecy, the clone army, the war itself, all of it could be orchestrated by someone sitting at the heart of Republic power, using the Jedi as unwitting instruments of his own ascension. Yoda rose from his seat, leaning heavily on his cane but moving with purpose. Investigate this, we must. But carefully. If right you are, Captain Picard, then in grave danger, all of us stand. The Supreme Chancellor commands the clone army. The loyalty chips, if he controls them. Then he controls the only military force large enough to enforce his will across the galaxy, Picard finished. Masters, I believe you're facing the possibility of a coup, one that's been in preparation for years, using the war as cover. Troy added her observation, her empathic senses picking up the undercurrents of emotion in the room. The Jedi are afraid. They're realizing they may have been manipulated into becoming the very thing they oppose, enforcers of tyranny. And they don't know how to stop it without triggering the catastrophe they've been trying to prevent. Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors burst open. A young Jedi Knight rushed in, his breath coming in gasps. Masters. Forgive the intrusion, but we have an emergency. A separatist fleet has just emerged from hyperspace near the Kaleida Nebula. They're attacking the Republic medical station there, the one treating wounded clones from the Ryloth campaign. The Chancellor is demanding the Jedi Council dispatch forces immediately, but our nearest ships are 3 hours away. Thousands of wounded will die. Mace turned to Picard, and in that moment, the Jedi Master's expression revealed everything, desperation, hope, and the weight of impossible choices. Captain, your Enterprise could reach the Kaleida Nebula in minutes using your impulse engines. I know you believe in non-interference, but... Those are wounded soldiers, Riker interrupted, his voice tight. Sentient beings, regardless of how they were created. Captain, the Prime Directive doesn't apply when lives are in immediate danger. Picard felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like a physical burden. Every principle he'd built his career on said to refuse, to remain neutral, to let this galaxy's conflicts resolve themselves. But those principles had been forged in a universe where Starfleet operated within known parameters, where the Federation's choices affected peoples they'd studied and understood. Here, they were blind. Ignorant. Operating in a galaxy whose fundamental laws, the Force, they had no connection to. And in that blindness, inaction itself was a choice. Those wounded clones hadn't chosen their creation. They hadn't chosen this war. They were victims of manipulation as much as anyone else. "Commander Data," Picard said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind, "how long to reach the Kaleida Nebula at full impulse?" 17.3 minutes, Captain. Picard looked at Yoda, at Mace, at Obi-Wan, at Jedi who had spent their lives serving the Force, only to discover they might have been serving a lie. "Master Yoda, if we do this, if we intervene to save those wounded, we cross a line. We become participants in your war, not observers. There will be no going back." The ancient Jedi Master met his gaze, and in Yoda's eyes, Picard saw something unexpected: gratitude. Not for the military assistance, but for the fact that someone was finally asking the right questions, making the hard choices, refusing to hide behind destiny or prophecy. "Cross that line you must, Captain," Yoda said quietly. "Already crossed it, you have, by seeking truth. The Force brought you here for a reason, even if in the Force you do not believe. That reason, perhaps this is." Picard tapped his comm badge. "Picard to Enterprise. Red alert. Set course for the Kaleida Nebula, full impulse. We have a medical station to defend." "Aye, Captain," came Worf's voice, and beneath the Klingon's professional tone was something that might have been satisfaction. "Finally, we take action." As the Enterprise crew prepared for their first military engagement in this strange galaxy, Picard looked out over Coruscant one last time. Somewhere in that glittering cityscape, a darkness was gathering, a manipulation spanning decades, orchestrated by someone who understood how to turn prophecy into chains. The Enterprise had come to this galaxy by accident. But perhaps, Picard thought, there were no accidents. Perhaps free will and destiny could coexist, each incomplete without the other. Or perhaps that was simply what beings told themselves when faced with choices too terrible to accept. Either way, the decision was made. The Enterprise was going to war. The Kaleida Nebula burned with colors no Federation scientist had ever catalogued, swirls of ionized gas in shades of violet and copper, backlit by dying stars whose radiation made sensor readings unreliable at best. The Republic Medical Station hung at the nebula's edge, a massive cylindrical structure marked with red crosses that meant the same thing across countless civilizations: sanctuary for the wounded, neutral ground even in the midst of war. The Separatist fleet ignored that sanctuary completely. "Status," Picard commanded as the Enterprise dropped out of warp at the nebula's perimeter. The view screen showed a scene of brutal efficiency, for Separatist frigates hammering the medical station with turbolaser fire while swarms of droid fighters eliminated escape pods. The station's shields were failing, atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches. Picard could see the wounded inside through the Enterprise's sensors, hundreds of clone troopers, their identical genetic signatures registering as a disturbing uniformity in Data's scans. "Medical station shields at 18%, Data reported, his fingers dancing across the ops console. "Detecting 1,200 life signs aboard, 70% of which are registering severe trauma. The station has minimal defensive capability, 2-point defense turrets, both disabled. Separatist forces consist of 4 Munificent-class frigates and approximately 200 Vulture droid starfighters. They are systematically destroying the station's critical systems." Worf's voice was eager. "Captain, weapons range in 30 seconds. The Separatist vessel's shields are primitive, a single photon torpedo spread would eliminate 3 of them. Their armor cannot withstand Federation firepower." And there it was, the moment Picard had hoped to avoid. The Enterprise could end this battle in seconds, demonstrating technological superiority so overwhelming that it would fundamentally alter the war's balance. Every Separatist ship out there operated on principles centuries behind Federation standards. Their shields, their weapons, their maneuverability, all of it was hopelessly outmatched. Which was precisely why using that advantage was dangerous. "Belay that order, Mr. Worf," Picard said. "Hail the Separatist fleet on all frequencies." Riker shifted in his seat. "Captain, with respect, they're destroying a medical facility. I don't think they're interested in talking." "Nevertheless, number one. We make the attempt." The view screen flickered, and a holographic image appeared, not a sentient commander, but a tactical droid, its photoreceptors glowing with cold calculation. "Unknown vessel, you are interfering in Confederacy military operations. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Picard stood, projecting every ounce of command authority he'd cultivated over decades. "I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. You are attacking a medical facility in violation of every principle of civilized warfare. Cease fire immediately and withdraw, or we will be forced to intervene." The tactical droid processed this for exactly 1.3 seconds. "Your vessel is not registered in Republic or Confederacy databases. You have no authority here. Resuming attack pattern." The transmission cut off. The Separatist frigates adjusted their formation, two breaking off to engage the Enterprise while the others continued pounding the medical station. Turbolaser fire lanced across space, emerald bolts of plasma contained in magnetic bottles, each carrying enough energy to vaporize a small building. They splashed harmlessly against the Enterprise's shields. "Shields holding at 98%, Worf reported, sounding almost disappointed. "Their weapons are completely ineffective, Captain. We could withstand this fire indefinitely. But the medical station couldn't." Even as Worf spoke, another section of the station's hull buckled under sustained bombardment. The shields collapsed entirely, leaving the wounded inside exposed to the vacuum. Picard watched escape pods launch desperately, only to be targeted by droid fighters with mechanical precision. "Captain," Crusher's voice came over the comm from sickbay, "I'm reading massive casualties on that station. Hundreds of wounded clones are dying right now. We can save them, but we need to act." Picard's mind raced through options, each carrying consequences that rippled beyond the immediate tactical situation. Full engagement would save the station but reveal the Enterprise's complete military superiority. Partial engagement might preserve some strategic ambiguity but cost lives. Withdrawal honored the Prime Directive but meant abandoning hundreds of sentient beings to execution. There were no good choices. Only choices he could live with. "Mr. Worf, disable those frigates. Target their weapons systems and engines only, no kill shots. Commander Data, calculate firing solutions that minimize casualties. And get a transporter lock on every life sign in that medical station. We're evacuating the wounded directly to our cargo bays." "Aye, Captain," both officers responded simultaneously. The Enterprise's phaser arrays came online with a sound like distant thunder. Unlike the visible bolts of turbolaser fire, phasers were nearly invisible, coherent nadion particle beams that struck at the speed of light. The first Munificent-class frigate never saw the shot that crippled it. Its weapons batteries simply ceased to exist, vaporized with surgical precision. The second shot took out its engines, leaving the massive warship tumbling in space, powerless and disarmed but intact. The second frigate lasted 3 seconds longer. "Impressive," Data observed. "The Separatist vessels are attempting evasive maneuvers, but their reaction time is insufficient. Their tactical algorithms were not designed to counter weapons with this level of precision and speed." Worf allowed himself a small smile. "The remaining 2 frigates are breaking off their attack on the medical station. They're attempting to flee." "Let them go," Picard ordered. "Focus on the droid fighters. Disable as many as possible, but prioritize those targeting escape pods." It was a display of technological sophistication that would have seemed like magic to anyone in this galaxy, targeting solutions calculated in microseconds, weapons fire accurate to within centimeters across thousands of kilometers. Within 90 seconds, the battle was over. 2 separatist frigates drifted powerless. 47 droid fighters had been disabled and captured in tractor beams for later analysis. The remaining fighters and frigates had retreated into hyperspace. And the medical station, badly damaged but structurally intact, hung in space like a wounded bird. Transporter room reports successful evacuation, data announced. 1,200 wounded clones now in cargo bays 2 through 5. Dr. Crusher has mobilized medical teams to provide immediate care. Riker turned to Picard. Captain, we're receiving hails from the medical station's commander and from the remaining Republic ships in the system. They're stunned, sir. They've never seen a battle resolved that quickly with that little collateral damage. Picard nodded slowly, watching the disabled separatist vessels on the view screen. He'd crossed the line. The Enterprise was no longer an observer, they were a military asset, a force that could tip the balance of this war simply by existing. Word of this engagement would spread. The Republic would want their help. The separatists would fear them or seek to destroy them. And somewhere, whoever was orchestrating this conflict would be recalculating their plans to account for an unpredictable variable from outside the galaxy. Open a channel to the medical station, Picard said. And get me a secure line to the Jedi Council. The medical station's commander appeared on screen, a clone officer with the same face Picard had seen on every soldier, but with a scar across his left cheek that marked him as an individual despite his identical genetics. Captain Picard, this is Commander Niner. You saved our lives, sir. 1,200 men owe you their lives. The Republic won't forget this. Commander Niner, we did what any civilized beings would do when faced with an attack on the defenseless. Your wounded are receiving medical care aboard our ship. Once they're stable, we'll transfer them back to Republic custody. Niner's expression, identical to every other clone yet somehow unique in its gratitude, showed something like wonder. Sir, permission to speak freely? Granted. The Jedi tell us we're fighting for freedom, for the Republic. But I've never seen freedom that looks like your ship, Captain. You don't have slaves doing your fighting. You don't have beings bred for war. Whatever galaxy you come from, it must be better than this one. The words hit harder than any turbolaser could have. Picard felt the weight of them, the implicit question beneath, if you're so advanced, so capable, why don't you save us all? Why don't you fix this broken galaxy with your superior technology and enlightened principles? Commander, Picard said gently, every civilization must find its own path to freedom. We can offer aid in moments of crisis, but we must not, impose our values on your galaxy. That choice belongs to your people. Even if our people don't get to choose. Niner asked quietly. Even if we're bred to follow orders and die for a republic most of us have never seen. Picard had no answer. Or rather, he had answers that felt hollow when spoken to a man whose existence itself was a violation of every principle Picard held sacred. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. It was Troy who spoke first, her voice soft. Captain, he's right. These clones, they're sentient beings denied autonomy, created as property, programmed with loyalty chips that override their free will. How can we claim to honor the Prime Directive while watching slavery on this scale? Because the alternative is worse, Geordi said from his console, though his voice lacked conviction. If we start trying to fix this galaxy, end slavery, reform governments, impose Federation values, where does it stop? We'd be conquerors, not explorers. Even benevolent conquerors. Are we sure, Worf rumbled, that we would be benevolent? The Klingon Empire once believed it brought order to chaos. The Dominion claimed it unified disparate peoples under wise leadership. Every empire in history has justified its expansion with noble rhetoric. Data interjected with characteristic precision. The philosophical dilemma is clear. Inaction allows atrocities to continue. Action risks becoming the very imperialism we oppose. There is no morally pure solution, only choices with different costs. Picard returned to his command chair, suddenly feeling every one of his years. Which is why we must move carefully, thoughtfully, and always with awareness of our limitations. We are not gods. We are not saviors. We are Starfleet officers doing our best in an impossible situation. The comm chimed. Captain, Data said, incoming transmission from Coruscant. It's the Jedi Council, and Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Picard's spine stiffened. The moment he'd been dreading had arrived. On screen. The view screen split, showing the Jedi Council chamber on one side and the Chancellor's ornate office on the other. Palpatine was exactly as Picard had imagined, elderly, grandfatherly in appearance, with a warm smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Those eyes held something else, something Picard couldn't identify but instinctively distrusted. Captain Picard, Palpatine said, his voice rich with practiced sincerity. On behalf of the Galactic Republic, I wish to express our profound gratitude. You saved 1,200 brave soldiers today. Heroes, every one of them. The Senate will want to honor you properly, of course. Perhaps we could arrange a formal reception. I'm certain many senators would love to meet the beings from beyond our galaxy. Master Yoda's eyes were closed, his expression troubled. Mace Windu stood rigid, his force senses clearly straining to perceive something just beyond reach. Obi-Wan watched Palpatine with carefully neutral interest, but Picard noticed the Jedi's hand resting near his lightsaber. Chancellor Palpatine, we appreciate the sentiment, but a formal reception won't be necessary. We did what any civilized beings would do in similar circumstances. Palpatine's smile widened. Modest and heroic. Remarkable qualities, Captain. But I must confess, this victory raises important questions. Your vessel's capabilities far exceed anything in the Republic arsenal. With your help, we could end this war in months rather than years. Thousands of worlds suffering under separatist oppression could be liberated. Surely your principles would support such an outcome. And there was the trap, laid with political sophistication. Refuse, and Picard would be choosing to prolong suffering. Accept, and the Enterprise becomes a weapon in a war they didn't understand, commanded by a leader who might be the very threat they were trying to uncover. Chancellor, Picard said carefully, my crew and I are still learning about your conflict. Before we could consider any deeper involvement, we would need to understand the war's origins, its objectives, and the various parties' true motivations. Surely you understand our caution. Something flickered in Palpatine's eyes, annoyance, perhaps, or calculation. Of course, Captain. Wisdom requires understanding. Perhaps I could provide you with classified intelligence. Information the Jedi themselves may not have access to. I'm certain a man of your experience would find it illuminating. Master Yoda's eyes snapped open, his ears lifting in clear alarm. Mace Windu stepped forward as if to speak, but Palpatine continued smoothly. We could discuss this privately, of course. No need to trouble the Jedi Council with political minutiae. What do you say, Captain? Shall we arrange a meeting? Just the two of us, leader to leader. Picard felt the trap tightening. A private meeting with Palpatine meant leaving the Jedi's influence, entering the Chancellor's territory, possibly exposing himself to whatever force manipulation Geordi's sensors had detected. But refusing might reveal their suspicions too early, before they had evidence. I would be honored, Chancellor, Picard said, choosing his words with exquisite care. Though I hope you'll understand if I bring Commander Data with me. His unique perspective often proves invaluable in diplomatic discussions. For just a moment, less than a second, Palpatine's mask slipped. His eyes narrowed, and Picard saw cold calculation beneath the grandfatherly warmth. Then the moment passed, and the smile returned, perhaps a shade less genuine than before. Of course, Captain. An android unbound by the Force. How fascinating. I look forward to our discussion. Shall we say tomorrow? I'll have my staff arrange the details. The transmission ended. The Jedi Council remained on screen, and Yoda spoke immediately, his voice urgent. Careful you must be, Captain Picard. Much darkness surrounds the Chancellor. Feel it, I can, but prove it, I cannot. Alone with him, you should not be. I won't be alone, Picard replied. I'll have Commander Data with me. And Data, I suspect, is the one being in this galaxy that Palpatine cannot manipulate through the Force. Data tilted his head. Captain, you believe the Chancellor will attempt to use Force persuasion on you? I believe he'll try something, Picard said grimly. And I want you there to observe what I might not see. You're our advantage, Data, a being of pure logic in a galaxy driven by mystical manipulation. Use that advantage. Riker stood. Captain, I don't like this. Walking into a meeting with someone who might be a Sith Lord is exactly what we need to do to learn the truth, Picard finished. Number 1, have Geordi prepare his analysis of those subspace anomalies. If Palpatine is using technology to hide his Force signature, I want to know everything about it before we meet him. As the bridge crew dispersed to their tasks, Picard remained in his chair, staring at the stars of this unfamiliar galaxy. They'd saved 1,200 lives today. They'd also revealed the Enterprise's capabilities to every major faction in the Clone Wars. And tomorrow, he would sit across from a man who might be orchestrating the galaxy's descent into tyranny, a man who, if their suspicions were correct, had spent decades weaving a web so intricate that even Force-wielding Jedi couldn't perceive its full scope. The Prime Directive was in ruins. The Enterprise was committed to this conflict whether Picard liked it or not. And somewhere in the depths of space, the disabled separatist frigates were transmitting tactical data to Count Dooku, who would be very interested in a vessel that could end battles in 90 seconds. The only question now was whether Picard and his crew could uncover the truth before they became pawns in someone else's game, or if they already were, and simply hadn't realized it yet. The Supreme Chancellor's office occupied the apex of the Senate building, a chamber designed to project power through architecture itself. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Coruscant's endless cityscape, while sculptures and artifacts from 1,000 worlds lined the walls, trophies of a republic that stretched across the galaxy. Palpatine sat behind a desk of polished Alderaanian marble, his hands folded, his expression warm and welcoming as Captain Picard and Commander Data were escorted inside by red-robed Senate guards. Data's sensors were recording everything. Every energy fluctuation, every subspace distortion, every microscopic detail that might reveal what Geordi's scans had detected from orbit. The android's positronic brain processed data at a rate that would have overwhelmed any organic mind, cataloging patterns that shouldn't exist in normal space. Captain Picard, Commander Data, Palpatine rose with grandfatherly warmth, gesturing to chairs arranged before his desk. Thank you for accepting my invitation. I must confess, I've been fascinated by your arrival since the moment Republic sensors detected your extraordinary entrance. Picard settled into the offered chair, his posture diplomatically neutral. Chancellor, we appreciate your hospitality. Though I must admit, our arrival was as unexpected to us as it was to your Republic. Of course, of course. Palpatine moved to a sidebar where crystal decanters held liquids from across the galaxy. May I offer refreshment? This is Alderaanian wine, considered among the finest in the Republic. Though I suspect your replicator technology could duplicate it perfectly. Thank you, no, Picard declined politely. We're still acclimating to your galaxy's biochemistry. Commander Data, of course, doesn't require sustenance. Palpatine's eyes lingered on Data for a moment longer than necessary, and the android detected a spike in the subspace interference Geordi had identified. It was subtle, a wave of energy that seemed to pass through the room like a gentle pressure. To a Force-sensitive being, it might have felt natural, imperceptible. But Data's sensors registered it as a deliberate manipulation of midichlorian fields, a directed attempt to influence biological systems. The Chancellor was using the Force. Trying to, at least. Remarkable, Palpatine said, returning to his desk with a glass of wine for himself. An artificial being with full sentience. In this galaxy, droids are tools, useful, certainly, but limited by their programming. Yet you, Commander, seem to transcend those limitations. Tell me, do you experience emotions? Desires? Ambitions? Data tilted his head in his characteristic gesture. I am capable of processing emotional contexts and understanding their significance, Chancellor. However, I do not experience emotions as organic beings do. My decision-making is guided by ethical programming and logical analysis rather than feeling. How liberating that must be. Palpatine's smile was practiced, but something beneath it felt predatory. To make choices unclouded by passion or fear. The Jedi claim such detachment as an ideal, yet they're still bound by the Force, still vulnerable to its pull. But you, Commander, you're truly free, aren't you? Picard recognized the conversational gambit immediately. Palpatine was probing, seeking leverage, trying to understand what made these outsiders tick. Chancellor, Commander Data's nature is his own business. Perhaps we could discuss the matter you wish to address. You mentioned classified intelligence about the war. Direct. I appreciate that quality, Captain. Palpatine set down his wine, his expression becoming grave. Very well. What I'm about to share is known to only a handful of beings in the galaxy. The Jedi Council is not among them, for reasons that will become clear. Data's sensors detected another surge in the subspace field, stronger this time, more focused. Palpatine was doing something, though whether it was force persuasion, mind reading, or simple intimidation remained unclear. Against Picard's organic brain, such techniques might work. Against Data's positronic matrix, they were meaningless static. 10 years ago, Palpatine continued, I came to power during what we call the Naboo crisis. The Trade Federation blockaded my home world, attempted to assassinate its queen, and invaded with a droid army. It was a tragedy that cost thousands of lives. But it was also, I discovered later, a test. A test of what? Picard asked. Of the Republic's weakness. Palpatine's voice carried calculated sorrow. The Senate debated while people died. Bureaucrats argued procedure while an entire world suffered. It was then I realized our democracy had become paralyzed by its own complexity. The Republic needed strong leadership, someone willing to make hard choices without endless committee deliberations. Data interjected, his tone analytical. You advocated for emergency powers. I accepted them when offered, Palpatine corrected gently. The Senate voted, democratically, I might add, to grant me authority to address the separatist threat. I didn't seize power, Captain. It was given to me by the people's representatives. A distinction, Picard said carefully, that many tyrants throughout history have used to justify their rule. Augustus Caesar, Napoleon, even Hitler, all claimed democratic mandates at some point. For a fraction of a second, something cold passed through Palpatine's eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by understanding warmth. You're a student of history. Excellent. Then you know that context matters. Those you mention subverted democracy from within. I am temporarily holding power granted by legal process, which I fully intend to relinquish once the war ends. And when will the war end? Picard pressed. Palpatine spread his hands in a gesture of honest frustration. That depends on factors beyond my control, Captain. Count Dooku leads the Separatists, but he's not acting alone. There are darker forces at work, forces even the Jedi don't fully understand. The Sith, Data stated flatly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Palpatine's expression shifted through surprise to careful consideration. The Jedi told you about the Sith. Interesting. Yes, Count Dooku has embraced the dark side of the Force. But the Jedi Council believes he's merely an apprentice. They suspect a master exists, a Sith Lord pulling strings from the shadows. They've searched for years without success. Have you? Picard asked quietly. Searched. Palpatine's smile was sad. Captain, I'm not force sensitive. I can't perceive these mystical threats the Jedi obsess over. I must rely on intelligence reports, military analysis, political intuition. And what those tell me is that this war has no clear villain beyond institutional failure. The Republic grew corrupt. The Separatists have legitimate grievances. The Jedi became too detached from common people's needs. There's blame enough for everyone. Data's sensors were now detecting multiple overlapping subspace fields, all centered on Palpatine. The pattern was sophisticated, layers of interference that would make force detection nearly impossible at close range. More interesting, the fields seemed to pulse in sync with Palpatine's emotional displays, as if he was using them to reinforce his performance. Chancellor, Data said, I have a question of a technical nature. Commander LaForge detected unusual subspace distortions emanating from this building. They create interference patterns similar to those that would disrupt midichlorian field generation. Are you aware of any technology in the Senate that might produce such effects? Palpatine's expression didn't change, but Data registered a microsecond pause before he responded, a processing delay that suggested careful calculation. Subspace distortions? How fascinating. The Senate building is equipped with extensive security systems, many of them classified. It's possible some defensive technology produces the effects you describe. I'll have my technical staff investigate. It was a deflection, smoothly delivered but fundamentally evasive. Picard noted it, filing the information away. Chancellor, you mentioned you wanted to share classified intelligence. So far, you've offered political philosophy and speculation about the Sith. What specifically did you want us to know? Palpatine stood, moving to the window to gaze out over Coruscant. When he spoke, his voice carried weight that suggested this was the true purpose of the meeting. Captain, I believe your arrival was not an accident. I believe the Force, or whatever cosmic mechanism governs reality, brought you here for a reason. The Force, Picard said, has no influence over us. We exist outside its reach. Precisely. Palpatine turned, and now his expression held something like excitement. Don't you see, Captain? The Jedi are bound by prophecy, trapped in ancient predictions about chosen ones and balance. They cannot act freely because they're always asking, what does the Force want? But you represent pure agency. Choice unconstrained by mystical destiny. With your help, we could break the cycle. What cycle? Data asked. The Jedi and Sith, locked in eternal conflict. Light and dark, each defining itself against the other, neither able to achieve lasting victory. For thousands of years, this cycle has dominated galactic history. But what if there was a third path? What if beings existed who could act based on reason and ethics rather than force alignment? Picard felt the seductive logic of the argument even as he recognized the manipulation behind it. Palpatine was offering them significance, purpose, a way to justify their intervention in this galaxy's affairs. He was also, Picard suspected, trying to position them as his instruments, tools to bypass Jedi oversight while claiming noble intentions. An interesting philosophy, Picard said neutrally. But it assumes the Jedi-Sith conflict is the galaxy's fundamental problem. Perhaps the real issue is concentrated power itself, whether wielded by Force users, military dictators, or well-intentioned chancellors who won't relinquish emergency authority. Palpatine's smile didn't waver, but Data detected another surge in the subspace fields. You're cautious. Wise. But consider this, Captain, right now, as we speak, millions are dying in this war. Clone soldiers, bred for battle, programmed for loyalty, are being slaughtered on 1,000 fronts. Civilians suffer under separatist occupation or Republic taxation. The Jedi chase shadows while real people experience real pain. You have the power to end this. Your technology, your principles, your outsider perspective, all of it could bring peace. At what cost? Picard stood, moving to join Palpatine at the window. From this height, Coruscant stretched to the horizon, a testament to civilization's grandeur and its terrible compromises. Chancellor, I've seen what happens when advanced civilizations impose their will on less developed ones. Even with the best intentions, it breeds dependency, resentment, and cultural destruction. The Federation's Prime Directive exists because we learned, through painful experience, that people must find their own path to enlightenment. Even if that path leads through suffering. Especially then, Picard said quietly. Because growth purchased with outside intervention is hollow. It's a gift, not an achievement. And gifts can be taken away. Palpatine studied him for a long moment, his aged features unreadable. You're a romantic, Captain. You believe in the nobility of struggle, in earning one's progress. Admirable qualities. But what happens when the struggle becomes genocide? When principle becomes complicity in atrocity? It was the question Picard had been wrestling with since their arrival. The same question Commander Niner had posed after the Kaleida Nebula battle. At what point did the Prime Directive become an excuse for cowardice? When did non-interference transform from wisdom into moral abdication? Data spoke up, his voice cutting through the philosophical tension with characteristic precision. Chancellor Palpatine, you have not actually shared any classified intelligence. You have offered philosophical arguments for why Captain Picard should involve the Enterprise more deeply in your war effort. This suggests your true objective is not information sharing but recruitment. The room fell silent. Palpatine's expression remained warm, but his eyes, those calculating eyes, fixed on Data with new intensity. You're direct, Commander. Another admirable quality. Very well. Here is the classified intelligence. I believe Count Dooku is not the Sith Master. I believe there's another, someone within the Republic itself, possibly within the Senate, who has been orchestrating both sides of this conflict for their own purposes. Picard's strategic mind seized on this immediately. That's remarkably close to the theory we've been developing independently. Do you have evidence? Circumstantial, Palpatine admitted. Patterns in the war's progression. Battles that should have been victories becoming stalemates. Intelligence leaks that benefit both sides equally. Resource allocations that prolong conflict rather than ending it. Someone wants this war to continue, Captain. Someone benefits from the Republic's gradual militarization. And you believe this mysterious Sith Lord is hiding in the Senate? Picard pressed. I believe it's possible. Palpatine returned to his desk, his movements suddenly tired, as if the weight of leadership had physically aged him. Which is why I need help from beings the Sith cannot manipulate through the Force. You're immune to their influence, Captain. You could investigate without arousing suspicion. You could find the truth where the Jedi have failed. It was brilliant, Picard had to admit. If Palpatine was indeed the Sith Lord they suspected, he just positioned himself as the one person actively searching for that very threat. He'd turned their investigation into a tool for reinforcing his own cover story. And if they refused to help, he could paint them as obstructionists, beings with power who refused to use it for good. Chancellor, Picard said slowly, I appreciate your candor. But before the Enterprise commits to any investigation, I need to understand something. These emergency powers you hold, when the war ends, how exactly do you intend to relinquish them? What mechanisms are in place to ensure a return to normal democratic process? For the third time, Palpatine's expression flickered, just for an instant, before resettling into grandfatherly warmth. The Senate will vote, of course. Once the separatist threat is eliminated and peace restored, I will formally request the powers be rescinded. The Senate will comply. Democracy will be restored. The Senate voted to give you those powers, Data observed. Why would they vote to take them away once peace is achieved? If you've proven effective with emergency authority, many senators might prefer you keep it. Human nature, and I suspect its analogues across species, tends toward security over liberty during crisis periods. And if the crisis has passed, you could argue the powers are needed for reconstruction. Palpatine's smile became a shade more forced. You're remarkably cynical for an android, Commander. I am remarkably logical, Data corrected. I am simply extrapolating from historical patterns. Temporary powers rarely remain temporary. The tension in the room had shifted. Palpatine was no longer conducting the conversation, he was responding to it, defending positions he'd expected to simply assert. Picard recognized the moment and pressed the advantage. Chancellor, I'll be frank. We will investigate your suspicions about a hidden Sith Lord. But we'll investigate everything, including your own government, your emergency powers, and the true purpose behind the clone army's creation. If there's a conspiracy, we'll find it. But we won't be anyone's instrument, including yours. For a long moment, Palpatine said nothing. The subspace field's data had been monitoring spiked sharply, then settled into a new pattern, more aggressive, more focused. The Chancellor was dropping some of his carefully maintained facade. I see, Palpatine said finally. You're admirably principled, Captain. I hope those principles don't blind you to practical realities. This galaxy operates by rules you don't understand. The Force, prophecy, ancient hatreds, these aren't metaphors. They're real, and they shape everything that happens here. You may find that your rationalist approach encounters problems reason alone cannot solve. Then we'll adapt, Picard said simply. That's what explorers do. Explorers, Palpatine repeated, as if tasting the word. Is that what you are? Not warriors. Not saviors. Just explorers. Just explorers, Picard confirmed. Though I've found that exploration often reveals truths that those in power would prefer remain hidden. Palpatine stood, signaling the meeting's end. Then I wish you luck in your explorations, Captain. The galaxy is vast, and its secrets are dark and deep. But be careful, some truths are dangerous to discover. And some enemies don't reveal themselves until it's far too late to stop them. As Picard and Data were escorted out by Senate guards, the androids spoke quietly through their secure comm link. Captain, my analysis of the subspace distortions is complete. Chancellor Palpatine is generating them himself. The interference pattern originates from his position and intensifies when he displays emotion or makes persuasive arguments. He is, without question, Force-sensitive and actively hiding that fact. Which makes him either the Sith Master we're looking for, Picard murmured, or someone with their own reasons for deceiving the Jedi about his abilities. Captain, Data said, there is a third possibility. He could be both. The Sith Master could be hiding in plain sight by positioning himself as the one person searching for the hidden threat. It would be the perfect camouflage. As they exited the Senate building into Coruscant's eternal twilight, Picard looked back at the towering structure. Somewhere in its highest chamber, Palpatine stood watching them leave, calculating his next move in a game that had been playing for decades. The Enterprise had come to this galaxy seeking answers. What they'd found were questions wrapped in lies, prophecies used as chains, and a war that served purposes no one fully understood. And at the center of it all, pulling strings, manipulating both sides, hiding behind a mask of grandfatherly concern, was a man who might be the most dangerous being in the galaxy. Or, Picard thought grimly, they were wrong, and the real threat was still undiscovered. Either possibility terrified him. Data, Picard said as their Republic shuttle lifted toward orbit, when we return to the Enterprise, I want you to begin a comprehensive analysis. Every decision Palpatine has made since taking office. Every battle of this war. Every political maneuver. Find the pattern. Find what he's really doing. Aye, Captain, Data replied. Though I suspect we will not like what we discover. No, Picard agreed, watching Coruscant recede below them. I don't think we will. The Enterprise hung in high orbit over Coruscant, its sleek form casting a shadow across Republic patrol ships that seemed primitive by comparison. In the ship's conference lounge, Picard's senior staff had assembled alongside three unexpected guests, Jedi Masters Yoda, Mace Windu, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, who had transported aboard using the Republic shuttle. The holographic display in the center of the table showed something that made even the ancient Yoda lean forward with troubled interest. Data stood beside the display, manipulating complex three-dimensional graphs with practiced efficiency. This is a comprehensive timeline of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine's political career spanning 32 years. Note the correlation between major galactic crises and his subsequent rise in authority. The hologram shifted, showing Naboo, a peaceful world of green continents and blue oceans. 32 years ago, Palpatine was a relatively unknown senator from this mid-rim world. Then the Trade Federation blockaded Naboo in what was claimed to be a taxation dispute. The crisis resulted in Queen Amidala calling for a vote of no confidence in then-Chancellor Valorum. Palpatine was elected in his place. Mace Windu's expression darkened. We investigated that crisis. The Trade Federation was manipulated by a Sith Lord, Darth Sidious. My apprentice, Qui-Gon Jinn, died fighting Sidious's apprentice, Darth Maul. Indeed, Data continued. But consider the outcome. The Trade Federation's leaders were arrested but never prosecuted effectively. They remained free to join Count Dooku's separatist movement years later. Meanwhile, Palpatine gained emergency powers to create a grand army, the Clone Army, which mysteriously appeared already grown and trained, commissioned by a dead Jedi using stolen identity codes. The hologram shifted again, showing a web of connections spreading across the galaxy like a neural network. Every major decision in this war has resulted in Palpatine gaining additional authority. The Military Creation Act. The Enhanced Security and Enforcement Act. The Reflex Amendment giving him direct command over Jedi deployments. Each granted, temporarily, none ever rescinded. Geordi added his own analysis, his visor tracking energy patterns in the data. And here's what's really disturbing. We've analyzed communications traffic across the Republic network for the past 3 standard days. Messages between Separatist and Republic forces show patterns that suggest coordination. Battles are being fought in ways that maximize casualties on both sides while preventing decisive victories. Obi-Wan stood abruptly, his usual diplomatic composure cracking. You're suggesting the war is being deliberately prolonged. That someone is orchestrating both sides to maintain conflict. Not suggesting, Master Kenobi, Picard said quietly. Demonstrating. Commander Data, show them the Bothui analysis. The hologram zoomed to a star system where hundreds of ships had clashed 3 months prior. The Battle of Bothui was described as a Republic victory that broke the Separatist blockade. But examine the tactical decisions made by both sides. The Separatist commander, Admiral Trench, positioned his fleet in a formation that left his flagship vulnerable despite having tactical superiority. General Anakin Skywalker exploited this weakness, but his pursuit was mysteriously called off by direct order from Coruscant, allowing Trench to escape with most of his force intact. Mace Windu's hand moved to his lightsaber, not threateningly but reflexively, seeking comfort from a weapon that had always provided clarity. You think Palpatine ordered Skywalker to let Trench escape? I think, Picard said carefully, that someone with authority over Jedi deployments ensured the battle achieved maximum propaganda value for the Republic while preventing actual strategic advantage. It's a pattern we've identified in 47 major engagements. Yoda's ears drooped, his ancient eyes closing in something like pain. Blind, we have been. So focused on fighting the war, we never questioned why it continues. The dark side clouds everything, but the cloud itself, examined it closely, we did not. Counselor Troi spoke up from her position beside Picard. Masters, I need to tell you something. When we met with Chancellor Palpatine yesterday, I couldn't sense his emotions clearly. It wasn't like the void we create, it was more like interference, as if something was actively blocking my empathic abilities. In my experience, that only happens when someone is deliberately hiding their true feelings. Or when someone is using force techniques to mask their presence, Obi-Wan said grimly. He turned to Yoda. Master, we should have detected force sensitivity in Palpatine if he possessed it. The fact that we haven't. Means he is hiding it, Worf finished, his Klingon directness cutting through the Jedi's careful phrasing. With technology Commander LaForge detected subspace dampeners that create force interference. He has been concealing his abilities for decades. The weight of the revelation settled over the conference room like a physical presence. For 32 years, the Jedi had worked alongside Palpatine, trusted him with galactic governance, followed his strategic direction in a war that was consuming the Republic. And the entire time, he'd been hiding the one thing that would have immediately marked him as a threat. If Palpatine is force-sensitive and concealing it, Riker said, thinking aloud, then he's either the Sith Master you've been searching for, or... There is no, or, Mace Windu said, his voice hard as Durasteel. The timing is too perfect. The manipulation too comprehensive. A Sith Lord orchestrating both sides of the war while positioning himself as the Republic's savior. It's exactly the kind of long-term strategy Sith philosophy would embrace. Patience, deception, turning enemies' strengths into weaknesses. Data interjected with his characteristic precision. Master Windu, I must note that while the circumstantial evidence is compelling, we have not yet obtained direct proof. Palpatine is force-sensitive and hiding it, this we can confirm through sensor data. But force sensitivity alone does not prove Sith allegiance. There could be alternative explanations. Name one, Worf challenged. Data paused for exactly 1.3 seconds, an eternity for his positronic brain. I cannot. All available evidence points toward the Chancellor being the Sith Master. However, acting on circumstantial evidence without confirmation could trigger the very crisis we fear. If we are wrong, we will have destabilized the Republic during wartime. If we are right but cannot prove it, Palpatine will know we suspect him and accelerate whatever plan he has been implementing. Picard nodded. Which brings us to the impossible question. What do we do with this information? The room fell silent. It was Yoda who finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of 900 years of wisdom and regret. Arrest him, we cannot. Evidence enough for the Senate, we do not have. And if try we do without proof, the clone army he commands will turn against us. Order 66. Order 66. Picard's attention sharpened. What is that? Obi-Wan and Mace exchanged troubled glances before Obi-Wan explained. The clone army has a series of contingency orders programmed into their behavioral chips. Order 66 designates the Jedi as traitors to the Republic and commands all clone troopers to execute their Jedi commanders immediately. It's meant as a safeguard against Jedi corruption. A safeguard, Crusher said from where she stood near the medical displays, her voice dripping with disdain, that conveniently allows whoever controls those chips to eliminate the entire Jedi Order with a single command. And let me guess, the Chancellor has authorization to issue contingency orders? As Supreme Commander of the Grand Army, yes, Mace confirmed bitterly. We walked into the trap and built it around ourselves. The Jedi became generals, scattered across the galaxy leading clone troops whose loyalty chips can be activated at any moment. We're not protecting the Republic. We're hostages to whoever controls that army. Geordi pulled up another display. It gets worse. I've been analyzing the clone behavioral chips architecture based on the medical data the Jedi provided. These aren't just simple command overrides. They're sophisticated neural programming that can rewrite priority hierarchies, suppress emotional responses, and enforce absolute obedience. Once activated, a clone can't resist. They won't even want to resist. It's not slavery, it's something worse. It's the complete elimination of choice at a neurological level. Worf's growl was low and dangerous. Every warrior deserves the right to choose their battles. To have that choice stolen through mental programming, he left the sentence unfinished, but his expression communicated perfectly what he thought should happen to anyone who would create such an abomination. The question remains, Picard said, bringing the discussion back to strategic reality, what can we do? We cannot arrest Palpatine without proof. We cannot rescue the Jedi from this trap without triggering the very massacre we're trying to prevent. And we cannot simply leave, even if our warp drive functioned, because abandoning this galaxy to descend into Sith tyranny would violate every principle the Federation was founded on. Then we find proof, Riker said. Direct, irrefutable evidence that Palpatine is Darth Sidious. We expose him before he can activate Order 66. And how do you propose we do that? Obi-Wan asked. The Jedi have been searching for the Sith Master for 3 years. If he's Palpatine, he's maintained perfect operational security for decades. What can you discover that we could not? Data tilted his head. Master Kenobi, the Jedi have been searching using the Force, a tool Palpatine has specifically learned to evade and manipulate. We have different advantages. Federation sensor technology operates on principles outside Force interaction. We can detect energy signatures, analyze subspace patterns, and track communications in ways that bypass Force-based concealment. Plus, Geordi added, we're not emotionally invested. No offense, Masters, but you want Palpatine to be innocent. He's been your political partner for years. That creates unconscious bias. We have no such attachment. If the evidence points to his guilt, we'll follow it regardless of political consequences. Yoda nodded slowly. Right, you are. Clouded by hope, our judgment has been. Hope that the Republic would survive. Hope that the war would end with victory. Hope that the Chosen One would bring balance as prophecy foretold. He opened his eyes, and in them Picard saw something he hadn't expected, fear. But what if the prophecy was never about Anakin? What if balance means something different than we believed? What do you mean? Troy asked gently. The prophecy says the Chosen One will destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force, Yoda explained. Always assumed we did that, destroy meant eliminate. But what if balance means something else? What if it means equalizing light and dark? The Jedi number 10,000. The Sith, only 2. Already balanced, we are not. The implication hung in the air like poison. If the prophecy required balance between light and dark, and the Jedi vastly outnumbered the Sith, then bringing balance meant, reducing the Jedi. Order 66 wouldn't be a perversion of prophecy, it would be its fulfillment. No, Mace Windu said forcefully. The dark side is corruption, not an equal counterpart to the light. Balance means eliminating the Sith's influence, not achieving numerical parity between Jedi and Sith. Master Windu, Data said carefully, from a purely logical standpoint, your interpretation appears to be motivated by desired outcome rather than textual analysis. If the prophecy states, bring balance to the Force, and the Force has light and dark aspects, then mathematical balance would indeed suggest. Enough. Mace's voice cut through the android's analysis. We're not debating theology right now. We're planning how to stop a Sith Lord from completing a decades-long plot to destroy the Jedi and enslave the galaxy. Picard stood, moving to the window where stars glittered against the black. We need a two-pronged approach. First, we gather absolute proof of Palpatine's identity as Darth Sidious. Second, we prepare a contingency for when that proof is revealed. The moment Palpatine knows we've discovered his secret, he'll activate Order 66. We need a way to protect the Jedi when that happens. The behavioral chips, Crusher said suddenly. If we can disable them before Order 66 is activated, the clones won't be able to execute the command. They'll remain in control of their own minds. 1,200 clones are currently in our medical bays, Geordi added, excitement building in his voice. We could remove or disable their chips right now. That's 1,200 soldiers who couldn't be used against the Jedi. And if Palpatine notices 1,200 clones suddenly immune to his control, Obi-Wan countered. He'll know we've discovered the chips and accelerate his timeline. We might trigger the very catastrophe we're trying to prevent. Riker leaned forward. What if we're more subtle? What if we don't remove the chips but modify them? Make it look like they're still functional while actually disabling the Order 66 protocol specifically. Palpatine's medical staff wouldn't detect the difference unless they physically examined each chip. Data nodded. That is technically feasible. Dr. Crusher and I could develop a procedure that appears to be routine medical treatment while actually rewriting the chip's core programming. The modification would be undetectable without invasive neural scanning. How long would it take to treat 1,200 soldiers? Mace asked. 8 hours if we use all medical facilities and optimize the procedure, Crusher calculated. We tell the clones it's a standard inoculation update for a virus we detected in the Kaleida Nebula. They'd have no reason to question it, and Republic Command would accept it as prudent medical practice. Yoda's ears lifted slightly. Begin immediately, you should. But 1,200 is a fraction of 3 million. The Grand Army numbers beyond counting. Save all of them, we cannot. No, Picard agreed. But we can save the ones we can reach. And perhaps, if we can prove Palpatine's guilt before he activates Order 66, we can prevent the command from being issued at all. Then we need that proof, Mace said. What's your plan, Captain? Picard turned from the window, his expression showing the weight of command decision. Commander Data will conduct deep analysis of all communications between Coruscant and known separatist leaders. If Palpatine is Darth Sidious, he's been communicating with Count Dooku, his apprentice, throughout this war. Those communications will have left traces, no matter how carefully concealed. I will also, Data added, analyze the timing and locations of known Sith sightings. If Palpatine has been personally engaging in Sith activities, his schedule will show unexplained gaps that correlate with those sightings. Meanwhile, Riker said, we need someone inside Palpatine's inner circle. Someone who can observe him directly without arousing suspicion. Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan said quietly. Palpatine has been mentoring him for years. Anakin has access to the Chancellor's private office, his confidence, his schedule. If anyone could gather direct evidence. Can he be trusted? Worf asked bluntly. You said he's troubled. That he's formed forbidden attachments. The Sith are known for exploiting emotional vulnerabilities. Obi-Wan's expression was conflicted. Anakin is complicated. He's the most powerful Jedi of his generation. He's also impulsive, passionate, and deeply attached to his wife. But he's loyal to the Jedi Order. If we explain the situation, show him the evidence. No, Yoda said firmly. Tell Anakin, we cannot. Too close to Palpatine, he is. Too much trust, he has invested. Hear the truth, he would not. Or worse, warn Palpatine, he might, believing he protects a friend from false accusation. The ancient Jedi Master's words carried the pain of difficult wisdom. He was admitting that the Chosen One, the being prophecy had designated to bring balance, could not be trusted with the information that might save the Jedi Order. Then who? Mace demanded. We need someone with access, someone Palpatine trusts, someone who can gather evidence without revealing our suspicions. The answer came from an unexpected source. Me, Senator Padme Amidala said. Everyone turned to see her standing in the conference room doorway, having entered silently during the discussion. She wore the formal robes of a Naboo senator, her expression showing both fear and absolute determination. Senator Amidala, Obi-Wan said, surprise evident in his voice. How long have you been? Long enough to understand that my mentor, the man who helped save my world years ago, might be the greatest threat the galaxy has ever faced. She moved into the room with regal composure, though her hands trembled slightly. Palpatine has known me since I was Queen of Naboo. He considers me a political ally and personal friend. I have legitimate reasons to meet with him regularly about Senate business. And unlike Anakin, I'm not blinded by personal affection. If Palpatine is a Sith Lord, I want him exposed. Picard studied her carefully. Senator, what you're proposing is extraordinarily dangerous. If Palpatine suspects you're investigating him, then I'll die, Padme said simply. But I'll die knowing I tried to save the Republic I've served my entire adult life. Captain Picard, you talk about the Prime Directive, about not interfering in other civilizations' development. But you're here now, whether by accident or design. You've already intervened. The question isn't whether to act, it's whether to act effectively or let fear paralyze us into inaction. The Senator's words struck at the core of Picard's ongoing dilemma. She was right. The Enterprise had crossed the line. They'd fought in the Kaleida Nebula. They'd met with both Republic and Separatist leadership. They'd analyzed the war's political structure and identified its true architect. They were already participants, whether they accepted that role or not. Very well, Picard said. Senator Amidala will maintain her normal relationship with Chancellor Palpatine, watching for any evidence of Force use or Sith activity. Commander Data will analyze communications and scheduling patterns. Dr. Crusher will begin modifying the clone behavioral chips. And the rest of us will prepare for the possibility that Palpatine discovers our investigation before we complete it. And when we have proof? Riker asked. What then? Mace Windu's expression was grim. Then we arrest him. The Jedi Council will confront Palpatine directly and place him under arrest for treason against the Republic. And we hope we can do it before he activates Order 66. Hope, Yoda repeated softly. Much, we hope for. But if wrong we are, if too late we are, then the Jedi Order falls. 10,000 years of light, extinguished in moments. That is the price of our blindness. As the meeting adjourned and the Jedi prepared to return to Coruscant, Picard remained at the window, watching the city world turn below. They were planning to confront the most dangerous being in the galaxy, a Sith Lord so patient, so cunning, that he'd orchestrated a galaxy-wide war as cover for his ascension to absolute power. And they were doing it with circumstantial evidence, uncertain allies, and technology that might or might not be sufficient to counter Force abilities they barely understood. Captain, Data said quietly, approaching from behind, I calculate our chances of success at approximately 37%. Those odds decrease significantly if Palpatine becomes aware of our investigation before we gather sufficient proof. Then we'd better work quickly, Commander, Picard replied. Because if we fail, this entire galaxy falls into darkness. And we'll have been complicit in its fall. In the Supreme Chancellor's office on Coruscant far below, Palpatine stood at his window, looking up at the Enterprise's distant silhouette. His aged face showed no emotion, but his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, held the patient satisfaction of a predator who has just spotted new prey entering his carefully prepared trap. Soon, he whispered to the empty office. Soon, you'll understand that the Force is not something you can simply analyze and overcome. And by the time you realize your mistake, it will be far, far too late. The Battle of the Kaleida Nebula had been 3 days ago. The clones' behavioral chips had been quietly modified and the soldiers returned to Republic service, none of them aware that they now carried insurance against their own programming. Senator Amidala had attended 2 meetings with Palpatine, reporting nothing overtly suspicious but noting his unusual interest in Anakin Skywalker's emotional state and his wife's pregnancy. And Commander Data had been working 72 hours straight, unnecessary for an android, analyzing patterns in the war's communication networks. What he'd found was damning. And terrifying. Captain, Data said, his voice carrying an urgency rare for the typically composed android, you need to see this immediately. Picard entered the Enterprise's astrometrics lab to find Data surrounded by holographic displays showing communication intercepts, scheduling data, and what appeared to be energy signature analyses spanning years. Geordi was there as well, his visor tracking patterns across multiple screens simultaneously. Show me, Picard commanded. Data manipulated the displays with practiced efficiency. I have been analyzing all subspace communications between Coruscant and known Separatist territories over the past 3 years. Republic intelligence encrypts their traffic, but Separatist encryption is less sophisticated. I was able to decode approximately 73% of their command-level communications. The hologram showed a network of communication nodes spreading across the galaxy like a spider's web. These are confirmed transmissions between Count Dooku and Separatist military commanders. Standard tactical coordination. But buried within this traffic, I discovered a secondary communication layer, heavily encrypted, using protocols that match no known Separatist or Republic standard. Geordi took over the explanation. We couldn't crack the encryption directly, but we didn't need to. We tracked the signals themselves. They originate from two locations, Count Dooku's flagship, the Invisible Hand, and, he highlighted a building on Coruscant that Picard recognized immediately, the Senate building. Specifically, from the area containing the Chancellor's private offices. Picard felt his pulse quicken. Palpatine has been communicating directly with Dooku. Not merely communicating, data corrected. Commanding. The transmission patterns show a clear hierarchical structure. Dooku sends status reports. The Coruscant source, presumably Palpatine, issues orders. It is a master-apprentice relationship, exactly as Sith tradition would suggest. Can you prove Palpatine is the sender? Picard pressed. The transmissions come from the Senate building, but that houses thousands of offices. Data shook his head. I cannot definitively prove Palpatine personally sent the transmissions. However, I can prove they originate from his office specifically, and I can correlate transmission times with his schedule. In every case, transmissions occurred when Palpatine had no scheduled appointments and his office security logs showed no visitors. Another display activated, showing a timeline. More significantly, I have identified 17 instances over 3 years when major Separatist military operations were preceded within 48 hours by these encrypted transmissions. The correlation is 99.7%. Someone in Palpatine's office has been providing Separatist forces with advance intelligence on Republic troop movements. That's treason, Geordi said flatly. Even if we can't prove it's Palpatine personally, someone in his inner circle is feeding information to the enemy. That's enough to justify a security investigation. Perhaps, Picard said carefully. But it's not enough to prove Palpatine is a Sith Lord. It suggests collaboration with the Separatists, but Dooku could be manipulating someone in Palpatine's office without the Chancellor's knowledge. We need more. Data anticipated the objection. Agreed. Which is why I cross-referenced these findings with another dataset. Captain, do you recall the Jedi mentioned that Darth Sidious, the Sith Master, has been orchestrating the war? The Jedi have documented 3 confirmed holographic communications with Sidious over the past decade. One during the Naboo crisis, one at the war's beginning, and one 18 months ago to Separatist leadership. The hologram shifted to show 3 separate transmission timestamps. I obtained the exact times of these transmissions from Jedi records. Then I analyzed Palpatine's schedule for those dates. In all 3 cases, Palpatine had scheduled private time in his office with explicit orders not to be disturbed. His security logs show no visitors. And in all 3 cases, energy consumption in his office spiked consistent with holographic transmission technology. Picard leaned forward, studying the data. It's circumstantial. Palpatine could have been conducting other private business. I thought so as well, Data agreed. Until I noticed this. He highlighted the energy signature patterns. The holographic transmissions use a unique encoding that requires significant power. I compared the energy spike patterns from Palpatine's office during these 3 known Sidious transmissions with the energy patterns during the encrypted communications to Dooku. They are identical, Captain. Same power consumption profile. Same transmission modulation. Same encoding algorithms. The pieces were falling into place. Palpatine wasn't just collaborating with the Separatists, he was Darth Sidious, commanding both sides of the war from his office at the heart of the Republic. We have him, Geordi said, a note of triumph in his voice. This proves Palpatine is communicating with both sides, coordinating the war's progression. It's not quite proof he's force-sensitive, but combined with the subspace dampening technology and his suspicious schedule. It's enough, Picard finished. It's enough to bring to the Jedi Council. They can use this to justify confronting him directly. He tapped his comm badge. Picard to bridge. Contact the Jedi Temple immediately. Tell Master Yoda we need an emergency meeting. We've found our proof. Before Worf could acknowledge the order, alarms shrieked throughout the ship. Red alert klaxons wailed. The Enterprise shuddered as something massive impacted their shields. Bridge to Captain, Worf's voice was tense. We are under attack. Multiple Separatist vessels have emerged from hyperspace and are engaging us. They came prepared, sir, their weapons have been modified to be more effective against our shields. Picard was already moving, Data and Geordi following. How many ships? 17 frigates, 43 cruisers, and over 500 droid fighters, Worf reported. Captain, this is not a random patrol. This is a coordinated assault specifically targeting the Enterprise. They knew exactly where we were and came prepared to overwhelm us. As Picard reached the bridge, the view screen showed a scene from a nightmare. The Separatist fleet had formed a spherical formation around the Enterprise, firing from all directions simultaneously. Turbolaser bolts hammered against the shields and waves, while droid fighters swarmed like insects, probing for weak points. Shields at 73% and falling, Worf reported. They are concentrating fire on specific shield sections, rotating targets to prevent regeneration. Whoever planned this attack understands our defensive capabilities. Riker was already in the first officer's chair. Captain, they're not trying to destroy us. Look at their formation, they're herding us away from Coruscant, forcing us toward the outer system. Data confirmed the analysis. Commander Riker is correct. The Separatist fleet is executing a tactical withdrawal pattern designed to pull us away from Republic-controlled space. They want us isolated. Why? Picard demanded, taking his command chair. The answer came in the form of a new contact on sensors. A massive vessel dropped out of hyperspace directly ahead, larger than anything they'd encountered in this galaxy, bristling with weapons that dwarfed the Enterprise. Data's sensors identified it immediately. Subjugator-class heavy cruiser, Data reported. The Malevolence. It is the Separatist fleet's most advanced warship, commanded personally by General Grievous. But Captain, it is carrying a weapon our sensors cannot fully analyze, some kind of focused ion cannon designed to disable entire fleets. They're going to try to capture us, Geordi realized. Hit us with that ion weapon, knock out our systems, then board while we're helpless. Captain, if they succeed, they'll have Federation technology, Picard finished grimly. Replicators. Transporters. Photon torpedoes. Everything we've been trying to keep out of this war. Mr. Worf, prepare for evasive maneuvers. We're not letting them. The Malevolence fired. It wasn't like any weapon Picard had seen. A massive sphere of crackling blue energy erupted from the Dreadnought's forward cannons, expanding as it traveled. The Enterprise attempted to evade, but the sphere was too large, too fast. It enveloped the ship like a wave, and every system aboard screamed in protest. Primary power offline. Geordi's voice came through emergency comms. The ion weapon is disrupting our EPS conduits. Shields are collapsing. Warp core is automatically shutting down to prevent breach. We're dead in space, Captain. The bridge lighting failed, replaced by dim emergency illumination. The view screen flickered and died. Around them, the Separatist fleet tightened its formation, weapons trained but not firing. They had the Enterprise exactly where they wanted it, helpless, vulnerable, and isolated from any potential Republic assistance. Detecting multiple transporter signatures, Data reported, his positronic brain still functioning even as ship systems failed around him. Boarding parties are materializing throughout the ship. Approximately 2,000 battle droids. They are equipped with ion weapons specifically designed to disable our crew without killing them. "Captain, they are attempting to capture the Enterprise intact." Worf rose, his hand on his phaser. "All hands, repel boarders. Security teams to key locations. Protect engineering and the bridge at all costs." Through the emergency lighting, Picard could hear the sound of weapons fire in the corridors beyond the bridge. Battle droids, their mechanical voices devoid of emotion, announced their presence with blaster bolts and explosive charges. The Enterprise crew fought back with phasers and the righteous fury of beings defending their home, but they were outnumbered 10-1. "Captain," Riker said, moving to Picard's side, "we need to abandon ship. Get critical personnel to escape pods before they overrun us." "No," Picard's voice was firm. "If we abandon the Enterprise, they'll have access to every database, every system, every piece of technology the Federation has developed. We cannot allow that." "Then what do we do?" Troy asked, her empathic senses overwhelmed by the mechanical precision of thousands of droids who felt nothing. Picard's mind raced through options, each more desperate than the last. They could initiate autodestruct, but that would doom everyone aboard, crew and attackers alike. They could try to retake engineering and restore power, but 2,000 battle droids made that nearly impossible. They could call for help, but the nearest Republic forces were hours away, and the Jedi. The Jedi. They had just discovered proof that Palpatine was Darth Sidious. If the Enterprise fell now, that proof would die with them. The Jedi would never know their true enemy until Order 66 was activated and it was too late. "Data," Picard commanded, "can you transmit our findings to the Jedi Temple? Some kind of emergency burst transmission." Data's fingers moved across his console, but he shook his head. "Negative, Captain. Communications are offline. The ion weapon specifically targeted our subspace transceivers. We cannot transmit beyond local range." "Then we fight," Worf growled. "We hold the bridge, protect the computer core, and resist until—" "Bridge is secure," a mechanical voice announced. The doors exploded inward, and battle droids poured through the breach. Dozens of them, their blasters trained on the command crew with mechanical precision. Behind them strode a figure that made even Worf pause. General Grievous was a nightmare of metal and organic components, a cyborg wrapped in armor, his 4 arms each capable of wielding a lightsaber. His electronic eyes fixed on Picard with cold calculation. "Captain Picard," Grievous said, his voice a mechanical rasp, "you will order your crew to stand down. The Enterprise is now property of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Resist, and I will have my droids begin executing your crew, one deck at a time. Your choice." Picard stood slowly, meeting the cyborg general's gaze without flinching. "General Grievous. I assume Count Dooku sent you. Count Dooku understands the value of your technology. As do I." Grievous moved closer, his mechanical legs clicking against the deck. "You have made a critical error, Captain. You believed your superior technology made you untouchable. But technology can be countered. Adapted. Overcome. Your Federation's principles are weaknesses here. Weakness I will exploit." Through the view screen, now functioning on emergency backup, Picard could see more separatist vessels arriving. This wasn't just a tactical strike, it was a full-scale operation to capture the Enterprise and reverse-engineer Federation technology for the separatist cause. And then, through the static of damaged sensors, Data detected something new. Multiple hyperspace signatures emerging from coordinates near Coruscant. Republic vessels, dozens of them, led by Jedi cruisers. And at the formation center, a signature Data recognized from the medical station rescue. The Resolute. Anakin Skywalker's flagship. "General Grievous," Picard said calmly, "I believe you should check your sensors. You're about to have company." Grievous turned to his tactical droid. "Report. Republic fleet emerging from hyperspace. 73 vessels including Jedi cruisers. They are moving to engage at attack speed." For a moment, Grievous stood perfectly still, calculating odds with mechanical precision. Then he turned back to Picard. "This changes nothing. I have control of your bridge. One word from me, and my droids execute everyone aboard this ship. You will order your crew to surrender the Enterprise, or..." Worf moved with Klingon speed, his phaser firing in a stun burst that took down 3 battle droids before the others could react. Riker tackled another droid while Data moved with android precision, disarming and disabling with efficiency no organic being could match. The bridge erupted into chaos, close-quarters combat between Starfleet officers who refused to surrender and battle droids programmed only to follow orders. Grievous' 4 arms drew weapons, not lightsabers, but electrostaffs crackling with energy. He moved toward Picard, clearly intending to take the captain hostage. And then the transporter's familiar whine filled the bridge. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker materialized directly between Grievous and Picard, their lightsabers igniting with distinctive snap-hiss sounds that filled the bridge with blue and green light. "General Grievous," Obi-Wan said with sardonic courtesy, "how unfortunate to find you here. I thought we'd destroyed your ion weapon months ago." "Kenobi," Grievous hissed with mechanical hatred. "Always interfering. This does not concern the Jedi. When the Separatists attack our allies, it concerns us very much." Anakin's stance was aggressive, his blade held in an attack position that promised violence. "Let's end this, Grievous. You, me, and no droids to hide behind." The cyborg general calculated his odds: 2 Jedi, a reviving Starfleet crew, and a Republic fleet engaging his forces outside. "This is not over, Captain Picard," Grievous said, activating an emergency beacon. "We know your capabilities now. We know your weaknesses. Next time, you will not be so fortunate." The battle droids collapsed simultaneously as Grievous transmitted a shutdown code. The cyborg general turned and smashed through the bridge window, not into space, but into a waiting droid fighter that latched onto him with mechanical arms and accelerated away. Within seconds, the Separatist fleet was retreating into hyperspace, leaving the crippled Enterprise drifting in space. Picard exhaled slowly, the adrenaline of combat fading. "Master Kenobi, Master Skywalker. Your timing is impeccable." Obi-Wan deactivated his lightsaber, looking around the damaged bridge with concern. "Captain, we detected the Separatist fleet massing and guessed their target. But we didn't expect them to hit you this hard. Someone told them exactly where you'd be and how to counter your defenses." Anakin's eyes narrowed. "Someone with access to high-level intelligence. Someone who knew the Enterprise's position and capabilities. Captain, you've got a leak. Either in your crew or in the Republic command structure." Picard and Riker exchanged glances. They both knew who the leak was. Palpatine had sent Grievous to capture or destroy the Enterprise before they could share their findings with the Jedi. The Supreme Chancellor had just shown his hand, and revealed how desperate he was to eliminate the threat they represented. "Master Skywalker," Picard said carefully, "I believe we need to have a very important conversation. About Chancellor Palpatine, about this war, and about who's really in control of the Republic." Anakin's expression shifted from confusion to guarded suspicion. "What are you talking about?" "The truth," Picard replied. "The truth the Jedi need to hear before it's too late." The Jedi Council chamber felt smaller with the weight of what was about to be revealed. Every master who could be reached had returned to Coruscant: Mace Windu, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, and others whose names Picard had learned over the past days. They sat in their circular arrangement, faces grave, while Yoda occupied his seat with an expression that suggested he already knew this day would come. At the chamber's center stood the Enterprise's senior staff and one notably reluctant Jedi Knight. Anakin Skywalker paced like a caged predator, his anger barely contained. "This is insane. You're accusing the Supreme Chancellor, the man who's held the Republic together during its darkest hour, of being a Sith Lord? Based on what? Energy readings? Communication patterns? Circumstantial evidence that could be explained a dozen different ways?" Picard remained calm, though he understood Anakin's resistance. The young Jedi had been mentored by Palpatine for years. To accept the truth meant accepting that this mentor, this friend, had been manipulating him all along. Master Skywalker, I understand your skepticism. But please, examine the evidence yourself before dismissing it. Data activated the holographic display, showing the same analysis he'd presented to Picard. The communication intercepts. The energy signatures. The correlations between Palpatine's schedule and known Darth Sidious transmissions. The modified clone behavioral chips that only someone with Supreme Commander authority could have ordered. The attack on the Enterprise that came immediately after they discovered proof of Palpatine's dual nature. Each piece of evidence alone might be questionable. Together, they formed a picture so clear that denial required willful blindness. Look at the timeline, Geordi said, manipulating the display to show 32 years of galactic history. Every crisis that elevated Palpatine's power. The Naboo blockade that made him Chancellor. The clone army that appeared exactly when needed. The war that granted him emergency powers. The gradual centralization of authority under the guise of security. It's not random. It's a plan executed with patience and precision. Mace Windu stood, his expression carved from stone. Anakin, I know Palpatine has been a friend to you. But friendship doesn't excuse treason. The evidence is overwhelming. Evidence can be fabricated, Anakin shot back. For all we know, Count Dooku planted this to divide us. Or the Separatists manufactured it to destabilize Republic leadership. Or, he turned to Picard with desperate anger, or you're lying. You appear from nowhere, claim to be from another galaxy, gain our trust, and now you're trying to turn the Jedi against the legitimate government. Maybe you're the Sith plot. Maybe this whole thing is. Anakin. Obi-Wan's voice cut through his former apprentice's tirade. Stop. Just, stop and think. Use the Force. Reach out toward the Chancellor and tell me what you feel. Anakin's jaw clenched. I've done that 1,000 times. He's not Force-sensitive. I would have sensed it. Would you? Yoda asked quietly. Or did you sense what he wanted you to sense? Clouded by his technology, your perception was dampened by subspace fields that hide Force signatures. Deceived, we all were. But deny it now, we cannot. Data spoke with android precision. Master Skywalker, I understand your emotional attachment to Chancellor Palpatine. However, I must point out a logical inconsistency in your defense. You claim the evidence could be fabricated by separatist forces. Yet this morning, those same separatist forces attempted to capture the Enterprise, an action that only makes sense if we pose a threat to their interests. If we were separatist agents, why would they attack us? The logic was irrefutable. Anakin opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again, his certainty cracking. Padme Amidala stepped forward from where she'd been observing silently. Ani, I've met with Palpatine twice since we started investigating. I've watched him carefully. And there were moments, brief flashes, where the mask slipped. Where I saw something beneath the grandfatherly warmth that frightened me. I didn't want to believe it either. But Captain Picard is right. Anakin turned to his wife, betrayal written across his face. You knew. You've been investigating him. Padme, how could you? Because I love the Republic, Padme said firmly. And I love you. And if Palpatine is what they say he is, then both are in danger. The Republic from his tyranny. You from his manipulation. Troy added her empathic perspective. Master Skywalker, your anger right now, is it really about protecting Chancellor Palpatine? Or is it about not wanting to face what his betrayal would mean? That you've been deceived. That your friendship was a tool. That he used you. The word struck home. Anakin's shoulders slumped, his aggressive stance faltering. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller, younger. He was always there for me. When the Council doubted, when they held me back, he believed in me. He said I was destined for greatness. That the Jedi didn't understand my potential. Classic manipulation, Riker said, not unkindly. Isolate the target from their support system. Make them dependent on you. Convince them that everyone else is the problem. Anakin, we've seen this pattern across 100 cultures. It's how predators work. Yoda rose from his seat, moving with effort that showed his 900 years. He approached Anakin with understanding in his ancient eyes. Used you, Palpatine has. But your fault, this is not. Clever, he is. Patient beyond measure. Deceived the entire Jedi Order, he did. Blame yourself, you should not. But accept the truth, you must. And help us stop him, you will. Anakin looked at the ancient master, then at Obi-Wan, at Padme, at the Enterprise crew who had no reason to lie. The weight of evidence was crushing. His mentor, his friend, the man who'd guided him for years, all of it was a carefully constructed lie. What do you need me to do? Anakin asked quietly. Mace Windu's expression softened fractionally. We need you to confirm what we suspect. Go to Palpatine. Tell him the Jedi are planning something, anything that would make him reveal himself. If he tries to turn you against the Jedi, if he speaks of Sith philosophy or offers you power through the dark side, we'll know the truth. You want me to bait him, Anakin said flatly. To betray his trust. We want you to expose his deception, Obi-Wan corrected. There's a difference. If we're wrong, if somehow all this evidence is mistaken, then Palpatine will have nothing to hide and your friendship remains intact. But if we're right, he left the sentence hanging. Picard interjected with a strategic concern. Master Skywalker, there's another factor. Palpatine knows we've discovered something. The attack on the Enterprise proves that. He'll be preparing his endgame, likely Order 66, the command that will turn the clone army against the Jedi. We don't have time for subtlety anymore. We need definitive proof, and we need it now. Data added technical detail. Dr. Crusher has modified the behavioral chips in 1,200 clone troopers currently aboard the Enterprise. Those soldiers are immune to Order 66. However, the Grand Army numbers 3 million. If Palpatine activates the contingency order, 99.6% of clones will execute their Jedi commanders immediately. The Jedi Order will be decimated within hours. The Council chamber fell silent as the enormity of the threat settled over everyone present. 10,000 years of Jedi tradition, countless lives dedicated to serving the Force and protecting the galaxy, all of it could end with a single command code spoken by a man they trusted implicitly. Then we strike first, Mace Windu declared. We arrest Palpatine before he can activate Order 66. Master Yoda, myself, Masters Fisto and Tyen, will go to his office and take him into custody. If he's truly the Sith Lord, he'll resist. And if he resists using Force powers, we'll have our proof. And if he activates Order 66 the moment you enter his office? Worf challenged. Your plan depends on him not having time to speak 2 words. That is tactically unsound. Geordi had been working on his pad throughout the discussion. I might have a solution. Captain, if we position the Enterprise in geosynchronous orbit directly above the Senate building, I can use our transporters to beam the Jedi directly into Palpatine's office. Instant insertion, no time for him to prepare or activate contingency codes. We grab him before he knows we're coming. Anakin shook his head. It won't work. The Senate building has transport inhibitors, security measures to prevent exactly that kind of intrusion. You'd never get a transporter lock. Republic transport inhibitors, data corrected. Which operate on completely different principles than Federation technology. Their inhibitors block local matter-energy conversion. Our transporters use Heisenberg compensators and annular confinement beams. The technology is sufficiently different that their countermeasures will be ineffective. A spark of hope flickered in the Council chamber. It was a plan that might actually work, bypass all of Palpatine's security, all of his preparation, and confront him before he could trigger the catastrophe they feared. There's another consideration, Picard said carefully. When you arrest Palpatine, assuming he is Darth Sidious, the galaxy will need to know why. You'll need to present evidence publicly, immediately, before his supporters can claim this is a Jedi coup. Senator Amidala, could the Senate be convened on short notice? Padme considered. If I invoke emergency session protocols, yes. Within 2 hours, we could have a quorum. But Captain, the moment we arrest the Supreme Chancellor, we'll be triggering a constitutional crisis. Half the Senate will see it as the Jedi seizing power. There will be accusations, possibly violence, even civil war beyond what we're already experiencing. Unless, Riker suggested, we broadcast evidence of Palpatine's treason directly to the Senate during the arrest. Show them the communication intercepts, the scheduling correlations, everything. Make it impossible to deny. Obi-Wan nodded slowly. It could work. If we move quickly, coordinate perfectly, and don't give Palpatine time to spin the narrative. But it's risky. If anything goes wrong, then the Jedi Order falls and the Republic becomes a Sith Empire, Yoda finished bluntly. But do nothing, and the same happens, only slower. Act, we must. Today. Now. The decision was made. Picard felt the weight of it. They were about to arrest the leader of a galactic government based on evidence discovered by outsiders who'd been in this galaxy less than a week. If they were wrong, the consequences would be catastrophic. If they were right and failed, the consequences would be apocalyptic. We'll need coordination, Picard said, shifting into command mode. Master Windu, select your strike team. Commander Data, prepare a comprehensive evidence package for transmission to the Senate. Senator Amidala, convene your emergency session but don't reveal the reason, we can't risk word reaching Palpatine. Commander LaForge, position the Enterprise for maximum transporter effectiveness. And Master Skywalker. Anakin looked up, his face showing the internal war he was fighting. Master Skywalker, I need you to do something incredibly difficult. Go to Palpatine. Act normally. Keep him distracted for the next hour while we prepare. Can you do that? Anakin's expression hardened with resolve. If he's really been manipulating me, using me as part of some grand scheme, then yes. I'll look him in the eye one more time. And I'll know. The Force will show me the truth. Padme moved to her husband's side, taking his hand. Ani, be careful. If he suspects. He won't, Anakin assured her. I'm a good actor when I need to be. And if he tries to turn me against the Jedi, he paused, his hand moving to his lightsaber. Then we'll find out whether prophecy means anything, won't we? As the meeting adjourned and everyone moved to their assigned tasks, Picard caught Yoda's eye. The ancient Jedi Master gestured for him to stay. Captain Picard, Yoda said once they were alone, thank you. For coming to our galaxy. For asking questions we should have asked ourselves. For seeing clearly when the Force itself was clouded. Master Yoda, we haven't succeeded yet. And I'm not certain we're doing the right thing. The Prime Directive exists to prevent exactly this kind of interference. Yoda's ears drooped. Know this, I do. But sometimes, the right thing and the easy thing are not the same. Your Federation's principles are wise. But wisdom sometimes means knowing when principles must bend to prevent greater harm. Or, Picard countered gently, knowing when bending principles creates greater harm than maintaining them ever would. Master Yoda, if we're wrong about Palpatine, we'll have destabilized your entire government based on circumstantial evidence and outsider paranoia. The galaxy might never recover. And if right we are? Yoda asked. Picard had no answer to that. Because if they were right, they were about to confront evil that had hidden itself for decades, orchestrated a galaxy-wide war, and positioned itself to achieve absolute power through a single command code that would turn millions of loyal soldiers into assassins. 2 hours later, the pieces were in place. The Enterprise hung in geosynchronous orbit above the Senate building, its transporter locked onto Palpatine's office through security measures that had never been designed to stop Federation technology. Mace Windu stood in the transporter room alongside Masters Kit Fisto, C.C. Tyan, and Aegon Kohler, four of the Jedi Order's finest warriors, prepared for battle. In the Senate chamber below, Padme had convened an emergency session, senators gathering with confusion about the mysterious urgency. And in the Supreme Chancellor's office, Anakin Skywalker sat across from Sheev Palpatine, making conversation about the war while his Force senses strained to perceive truth beneath lies. "Anakin," Palpatine was saying, his voice warm with grandfatherly affection, "you seem troubled. Is something wrong?" Anakin met his gaze, and for the first time in years, he didn't see a mentor. He saw something else. Something patient. Something waiting. "I'm fine, Chancellor," Anakin said. "Just thinking about the future. About what happens when the war finally ends." Palpatine smiled. "The war will end, my boy. Very soon now. And when it does, the galaxy will be transformed into something far greater than the corrupt republic we've known. Something that could last 1,000 years. The word choice was deliberate. Calculated. Testing. And in that moment, Anakin felt it, a ripple in the Force that shouldn't have been there. A presence that had been hidden his entire life suddenly becoming visible, like a predator stepping from shadows. "Supreme Chancellor," Anakin said quietly, his hand moving toward his lightsaber, "who are you really?" Palpatine's smile widened, and his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, began to glow with yellow light. "I wondered when you would finally see, my young friend. The Jedi are very close now, aren't they? Very close to discovering what I am." On the Enterprise's bridge, Data detected the energy spike immediately. "Captain, Chancellor Palpatine has dropped his Force concealment. I am detecting massive midichlorian field generation emanating from his office. He knows we're coming." Picard didn't hesitate. "Energize. Get those Jedi down there now." The transporter whined, and 4 Jedi materialized in Palpatine's office just as the Supreme Chancellor rose from his desk, his aged features transforming into something terrible and ancient. Lightning crackled around his fingers, raw dark side energy that had been contained for decades finally unleashed. "At last," Darth Sidious said, his voice no longer grandfatherly but filled with malevolent joy. "At last, we can stop pretending." And the battle for the Republic's soul began. The Supreme Chancellor's office erupted into chaos as Darth Sidious moved with a speed that defied his elderly appearance. His hands extended, and Force lightning, pure dark side energy, exploded from his fingertips in a cascade of blue-white destruction that scorched the office's elegant furnishings. Master C.C. Tyan barely had time to ignite his lightsaber before the lightning struck him, overwhelming his defenses and throwing him against the wall with lethal force. He collapsed, smoke rising from his robes, dead before he hit the floor. "Jedi traitors!" Sidious shrieked, his voice carrying across every comm channel in the Senate building. His words were broadcast instantly to news networks across Coruscant, carefully crafted to paint the Jedi as aggressors. "You come to murder me in my own office. The Jedi betray the Republic." Mace Windu's purple blade deflected the next lightning strike, the energy crackling against the lightsaber's plasma field. "The Jedi are the Republic, Sidious. Your deception ends now." Masters Fisto and Kohler attacked from opposite sides, their blades weaving patterns of light designed to overwhelm any single opponent. But Sidious was not any opponent. He drew a lightsaber, red as blood, a Sith weapon hidden in plain sight for decades, and met their assault with Form 7 combat techniques so advanced they seemed impossible. His blade moved in arcs that shouldn't have worked, leveraging angles that defied physics, enhanced by the dark side until each strike carried the weight of hatred itself. Aegon Kohler lunged forward, seeing an opening. Sidious's blade caught him through the chest, the red plasma burning through Jedi robes and flesh with surgical precision. The Master fell without a sound. On the Enterprise bridge, Picard watched through sensor feeds, his knuckles white on the armrest. Data, broadcast our evidence to the Senate now. Override their communication systems if you have to. Every senator needs to see what Palpatine truly is. Broadcasting, Captain, data confirmed. Throughout the Senate chamber, holographic displays suddenly activated against the senator's will, showing the comprehensive evidence data had compiled. Communication intercepts. Energy signatures. Scheduling correlations. Testimony from Padme Amidala about Palpatine's force concealment technology. The senators watched in stunned silence as 32 years of manipulation unfolded before their eyes. In Palpatine's office, Anakin stood frozen, watching his mentor, the man who'd guided him, believed in him, shaped him, revealed as the very evil the Jedi had sworn to destroy. The betrayal cut deeper than any lightsaber could. All those conversations, all that trust, all those moments of connection, lies. Every single one. Anakin, Sidious called, even as he dueled Masters Windu and Fisto simultaneously, help me. The Jedi are taking over. They want to destroy the Republic, to impose their will on the galaxy. I've always believed in you, my boy. I've always seen your potential. Don't let them kill me. It was the final manipulation, the last desperate attempt to turn Anakin to the dark side. And for a moment, one terrible, crystalline moment, Anakin felt the pull. The anger at being deceived, the hurt at being used, the fear of what this meant for Padme, for the Republic, for everything he'd fought to protect. The dark side whispered that he could end this pain, that embracing his anger would give him the power to fix everything. But then he remembered Padme's words. The evidence Commander Data had shown him. The patience with which Captain Picard had explained Federation principles, how choice mattered more than power, how justice required rejecting easy answers in favor of difficult truths. No, Anakin said, igniting his lightsaber. Master Yoda was right. You used me. You've been using all of us. But it ends now. Sidious's yellow eyes widened fractionally, surprised that his decades of manipulation had failed at the critical moment. Foolish boy. You have no idea what you're rejecting. I could have given you the power to save Padme, to prevent death itself. Now you'll watch her die, knowing you could have stopped it. The words struck like daggers, revealing knowledge Sidious shouldn't have possessed. He knew about Anakin's fears, his nightmares about Padme dying in childbirth. He'd known all along and had been preparing to use that fear as the final lever to complete Anakin's fall. But acknowledging the fear didn't mean surrendering to it. I'll save her, Anakin said, his voice steady despite the terror coursing through him, by trusting the people who've earned that trust. Not by bargaining with Sith lords who built their power on lies. Mace Windu seized the moment of distraction. His blade swept past Sidious's defense, severing the Sith Lord's weapon hand. The red lightsaber clattered to the floor, and Sidious stumbled backward, clutching his stump, his force lightning flickering and dying. It's over, Windu declared, his purple blade at Sidious's throat. You're under arrest for treason against the Galactic Republic. But even defeated, even disarmed, Sidious smiled. It was a terrible expression, not the warm grandfatherly smile of Chancellor Palpatine, but the triumphant grin of a predator who'd planned for every contingency. Is it over? Sidious asked. How naive you are, Master Windu. Did you think I would come this far, plan this long, without insurance? His remaining hand moved to a concealed device on his desk, a panic button designed for exactly this scenario. He pressed it, and across the galaxy, in orbit of 1,000 worlds, in the corridors of 10,000 Republic vessels, in the minds of 3 million clone troopers, a single command activated. Execute Order 66. The words echoed through the Force itself, a scream of darkness that every Jedi felt simultaneously. On Cato Neimoidia, Master Plo Koon starfighter was shot down by his own clone pilots. On Mygeeto, Ki-Adi-Mundi turned to face his troops just as they opened fire, his last thought one of betrayal. On Kashyyyk, Master Luminara Unduli fell defending Wookiees who couldn't understand why the soldiers they'd fought beside suddenly became executioners. On Felucia, Aayla Secura didn't even have time to scream. Across the galaxy, the Jedi Order died in minutes. In the Enterprise's medical bay, 1,200 clone troopers felt the command pulse through their chips, and felt nothing else. Dr. Crusher's modifications held. They remained themselves, aware of what was happening but unable to execute. Commander Cody, one of the modified clones, grabbed the nearest comm unit. "Bridge, this is Commander Cody. Order 66 just activated. My brothers are killing Jedi everywhere. We could feel it, the command trying to override our will. If the doctor hadn't modified our chips," his voice broke. "Oh God. What are we doing? What have we been programmed to do?" On Coruscant, in the Jedi Temple, clone troopers of the 501st Legion marched through sacred halls, their blasters cutting down Padawans and masters alike. Jedi who'd led them in battle, saved their lives, earned their respect, none of it mattered. The chips overrode everything, turning loyal soldiers into remorseless killers with a single command. But in Palpatine's office, before Sidious could savor his victory, Mace Windu's blade descended. The Sith Lord screamed, rage and hatred and the dark side itself given voice, as the purple lightsaber carved through flesh and bone. And then Darth Sidious, who had orchestrated the Clone Wars, manipulated galactic politics for 3 decades, and very nearly succeeded in destroying the Jedi Order entirely, was dead. His body slumped to the floor, smoking and still. Mace Windu stood over the corpse, breathing heavily. Kit Fisto leaned against the wall, exhausted but alive. And Anakin Skywalker stared at the body of the man who tried to turn him into a monster. "It's done," Windu said quietly. "The Sith Lord is dead. But Order 66 is still active," Picard's voice came through the comm system. "Masters, we're detecting mass casualties across the galaxy. Jedi are falling by the thousands. The clone programming is executing exactly as designed." Data added precise horror to the statement. Initial casualty estimates suggest 87% of the Jedi Order has been eliminated in the first 15 minutes of Order 66's activation. The remaining 13% are either in locations without clone support or are successfully evading their assassins. However, without intervention, total extinction of the Jedi Order is projected within 3 hours. Anakin grabbed the comm unit from the wall. "Can you shut it down? Override the command somehow?" "Negative," Geordi's voice responded. "The command is hard-coded into the behavioral chips. Once activated, it runs to completion. The only way to stop it is to physically disable each chip individually, a procedure that takes hours per soldier. Captain, we don't have the medical capacity to save more than a few thousand clones before the Order completes its execution." The terrible mathematics of genocide settled over everyone. 3 million clone troopers. Approximately 1,300 Jedi still alive and fighting for survival across 1,000 worlds. Even with the Enterprise's capabilities, they couldn't save everyone. "Then we prioritize," Picard decided, his voice carrying the weight of command in its darkest hour. "Data, identify Jedi survivors. Beam them directly to the Enterprise or to Republic vessels not carrying clone troopers. Senator Amidala, you need to address the Senate immediately. Tell them what's happened. Tell them Palpatine was Darth Sidious, that he activated a genocidal contingency, and that the Republic needs emergency leadership before the government collapses entirely." Padme's face appeared on the holographic display, tears streaming down her cheeks as she watched the casualty reports coming in. "Captain, the Senate is in chaos. Half think the Jedi attempted a coup and deserved Order 66. The other half think Palpatine was a tyrant and the clones are criminals. We're on the verge of civil war beyond anything the Separatists achieved." "Then prevent it," Picard said simply. "You're a senator from Naboo, Palpatine's home world. You have moral authority. Use it. Show them the evidence. Make them understand what happened. Because if the Republic tears itself apart now, Sidious wins even in death. As Padme moved to address the Senate, Riker coordinated with Data to begin emergency extractions. Jedi signatures were located across the galaxy, and the Enterprise's transporter began pulling them to safety. Master Plo Koon's X-Wing exploded, but his body materialized in transporter room 3 milliseconds before the ship's destruction. Shaak Ti, fighting desperately on Kamino, vanished mid-battle and appeared in Cargo Bay 4, confused but alive. Across 100 worlds, Jedi who expected death found themselves suddenly aboard a vessel that existed outside the Force's reach, saved by technology their order had never imagined. But they couldn't save everyone. Master Luminara Unduli died on Kashyyyk before transporters could lock on. Ayla Secura's Force signature vanished from Felucia. Dozens, then hundreds of Jedi simply ceased to exist as clone blasters found their marks. Each death registered in the Force as a scream of light being extinguished, and Yoda, back in the temple, desperately trying to coordinate an evacuation, felt every single one. Too late, the ancient master whispered, tears falling freely. Too late, we were. See the truth until too late, we did not. On Utapau, Obi-Wan Kenobi had just finished eliminating General Grievous when his clone commander, Cody, raised his blaster. The Force screamed warning, and Obi-Wan threw himself off a cliff into water below just as bolts seared the air where he'd been standing. He swam desperately for the surface, the weight of what was happening across the galaxy threatening to drown him more thoroughly than any ocean. Aboard the Enterprise, Worf coordinated with Republic forces not contaminated by Order 66, naval personnel, starfighter pilots, military officers who weren't clones and couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Formed defensive perimeters around Jedi evacuation zones. Any clone trooper approaching with weapons drawn is to be treated as hostile. It was ugly. It was necessary. And it was tearing the Republic military apart from within. In the Senate chamber, Padme stood at the central podium, her voice amplified to reach every senator in the vast circular room. Members of the Senate, what we are witnessing is not a Jedi coup. It is the final act of a Sith plot 32 years in the making. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine was Darth Sidious, a Sith Lord who orchestrated both sides of the Clone Wars to achieve absolute power. The evidence is irrefutable. She gestured, and Data's comprehensive analysis played across holographic displays. Every senator watched as the truth of their republic's corruption unfolded. Some refused to believe. Others wept. Still others simply sat in stunned silence, comprehending that everything they'd fought for had been manipulated by darkness. The clone behavioral chips were designed for this purpose, Padme continued. To eliminate the Jedi at a single command. To remove the only force capable of opposing Sith tyranny. Thousands have already died, Jedi who served the Republic faithfully, who led our armies, who sacrificed everything to protect us. And now we face a choice. Do we allow their deaths to be meaningless? Do we let the Republic descend into the empire Palpatine was building? Or do we honor their sacrifice by reclaiming the democracy they died to preserve? Bail Organa stood, his voice carrying across the chamber. Senator Amidala speaks truth. I propose emergency legislation, immediate deactivation of all clone behavioral modification chips. Any clone trooper found executing Jedi after this moment will be considered guilty of war crimes. And we establish a tribunal to investigate all of Palpatine's actions during his tenure. The Republic must be cleansed of his corruption. Mon Mothma joined him. I second the proposal. But we must also address the fact that our military, 3 million clone soldiers, have just committed genocide under programmed compulsion. They are both victims and perpetrators. How do we reconcile that? Commander Cody's voice came through the Senate's communication system, broadcast from the Enterprise. Senators, this is Commander Cody of the 212th Attack Battalion. My chip was modified by Federation doctors before Order 66 activated. I felt the command try to override my will. It would have succeeded, I would have killed Jedi without hesitation, without choice. My brothers across the galaxy just did exactly that. We are weapons, senators. Weapons someone else built and fired. If there's justice to be served, serve it on the Sith who programmed us, not on soldiers who never had a choice. The words resonated. Across the Senate chamber, across the galaxy, across worlds watching the proceedings broadcast in real time, people began to understand the full horror of what Palpatine had created. An army of slaves programmed to commit genocide. Jedi who'd served faithfully betrayed by the very republic they protected. A war orchestrated by both sides' hidden master to achieve power through manufactured crisis. The death toll was catastrophic, nearly 7,000 Jedi dead in the first hour. But the 1,300 survivors were being evacuated, their chips' deactivation codes being transmitted to clone commanders across the galaxy, and slowly, painfully, the massacre was ending. Captain, data reported, I am detecting a significant reduction in hostile actions against Jedi. Clone commanders are standing down their troops. Order 66 is being countermanded across multiple sectors. The Jedi Order will survive. But at what cost? An order that had numbered 10,000 was reduced to barely more than 1,000 in a single afternoon. Temples across the galaxy burned. Younglings, children who'd been training to become Jedi, were dead, killed by soldiers they'd trusted. Masters with centuries of wisdom were gone, their knowledge lost forever. Mace Windu stood in what remained of Palpatine's office, looking at the Sith Lord's body. We won, he said, but his voice held no triumph. We stopped him. But we paid a terrible price. Anakin placed a hand on the Master's shoulder. We survived. That's what matters. The Order survives. The Republic survives. And we'll rebuild. That's what Jedi do, we rebuild after darkness. Kit Fisto nodded slowly. The Chosen One. The prophecy said he would bring balance to the Force. Anakin, you were there when we needed you. You chose light over darkness. Perhaps that's what balance means, choice. Not destiny, but the freedom to choose. On the Enterprise, Yoda materialized in the transporter room, his expression aged beyond his 900 years. Picard was there to meet him, understanding that this moment required presence, not words. Thank you, Captain Picard, Yoda said simply. For coming to our galaxy. For asking questions. For seeing clearly when we were blind. Without you, the Jedi would be extinct. The Republic would be an empire. Darkness would have won. Picard knelt so he could meet the ancient master's eyes. Master Yoda, I'm not certain we did the right thing. We interfered in your galaxy's development. We violated every principle of non-interference the Federation was built on. Thousands are dead because we couldn't prevent Order 66 fast enough. No, Yoda said firmly. Thousands are alive because you prevented worse. The Prime Directive, wise it is. But wisdom sometimes means knowing when principles must yield to compassion. Changed our galaxy, you have. But saved it, you also have. Grateful, we are. Grateful, the Force is. As the hours passed and the immediate crisis faded into the longer work of rebuilding, the Enterprise remained in orbit above Coruscant. In the cargo bays, over 1,000 Jedi, all that remained of a once mighty order, gathered to mourn their fallen and plan for an uncertain future. In the Senate, representatives debated how to rebuild democracy from tyranny's ashes. On 1,000 worlds, clone troopers had their behavioral chips removed, finally becoming truly free to choose their own destinies. And in the captain's quarters, Jean-Luc Picard sat alone, staring at a glass of Earl Grey tea he couldn't bring himself to drink. They had won. They had stopped the Sith Lord's plot to destroy the Jedi and enslave the galaxy. But the cost, the terrible, aching cost, would haunt him for whatever remained of his life. Computer, he said quietly, begin Captain's log. The computer chirped acknowledgement. Captain's log, stardate, unknown. We have no stardate system that applies to this galaxy. We came here by accident, stranded by a subspace anomaly we don't understand and cannot replicate. We intended to observe, to learn, to maintain the Prime Directive that has guided Starfleet exploration for 2 centuries. Instead, we became participants in this galaxy's defining conflict. We helped expose a Sith Lord who'd manipulated galactic politics for decades. We helped prevent, partially, a genocide that would have extinguished the Jedi Order. We helped preserve a republic that was hours away from becoming an empire. He paused, the weight of what they'd done settling into his bones. But we also facilitated the deaths of 7,000 Jedi who died before we could save them. We destabilized a galactic government during wartime. We introduced Federation technology and principles into a civilization that had developed independently for millennia. And we cannot leave. Our warp drive remains incompatible with this galaxy's hyperspace technology. We are stranded here, permanent residents of a reality that isn't ours, forever changed by contact with beings who exist outside the Force. Another pause. Longer this time. Was it worth it? I don't know. The Jedi say we saved their order. The Republic says we saved democracy. But we violated every principle non-interference was designed to protect. And I wonder, in the quiet moments when command decisions fade and I'm left alone with consequences, whether we had any right to make these choices for a galaxy that never asked for our presence. He stared at the stars visible through his window, stars in configurations no human had seen until a week ago. But we're here now. For better or worse, the USS Enterprise is part of this galaxy's history. And perhaps that's the real lesson the Prime Directive teaches: once you're involved, you can't pretend otherwise. You can only try to do the least harm and hope that your actions serve justice rather than just your own certainty of rightness. He ended the log and finally drank his tea. It was cold. 3 months after the death of Darth Sidious, the galaxy was still finding its balance. The Clone Wars had ended not with victory parades but with exhausted compromise. Count Dooku's death, killed by Republic forces during the final battle of the war, had left the separatist movement leaderless. Without Sidious orchestrating both sides, the conflict simply collapsed under its own weight. Systems that had seceded negotiated returns to the Republic with guarantees of greater autonomy. Corporate interests that had funded the war found their assets frozen and their leadership facing war crimes tribunals. The droid armies were decommissioned, their weapons melted down to build hospitals and schools on worlds the war had devastated. The clone troopers, all 3 million of them, faced a galaxy that didn't know whether to treat them as heroes or war criminals. Commander Cody had become their spokesperson, arguing before the Senate that beings created as weapons deserved the chance to become something more. The Republic, still raw from Palpatine's betrayal, had agreed. Clones were granted full citizenship, their chips removed, their service records honored. Many chose to remain in military service, but now as volunteers with the right to refuse orders. Others pursued civilian lives, discovering identities beyond the serial numbers they'd been assigned at creation. It was messy, complicated, and profoundly human, exactly what freedom should be. The Jedi Order, reduced from 10,000 to barely more than 1,000, faced the hardest questions. For millennia, they had served as the Republic's guardians, certain in their connection to the Force and confident in their interpretation of its will. But the Force had not warned them about Palpatine. Prophecy had not saved them from manipulation. Their certainty had been weaponized against them by an enemy patient enough to turn their strengths into fatal vulnerabilities. Master Yoda, in a decision that shocked the galaxy, stepped down as Grand Master. Failed, I have, he told the Council with absolute honesty. Led the Order into darkness, I did, believing it was light. Time for new leadership, it is. Time for new questions. Mace Windu became the new Grand Master, and his first act was to establish a formal partnership with Captain Picard. We need outsiders, Windu explained to the Council. We need beings who can see what the Force cannot show us, who ask questions we've trained ourselves not to ask. The Enterprise represents everything the Jedi forgot, the value of choice over destiny, of science alongside mysticism, of questioning even our most sacred beliefs. The partnership was formalized in what became known as the Coruscant Accords. The Federation, represented by a ship that couldn't leave even if it wanted to, agreed to assist the Republic in rebuilding, offering replicator technology for humanitarian aid, medical knowledge to heal war's wounds, and transporters to reconnect systems the war had isolated. In return, the Republic provided the Enterprise with resources to study the dimensional anomaly that had brought them here, hoping that someday, somehow, they might find a way home. But home felt increasingly distant. The Enterprise crew had put down roots. Dr. Crusher trained Republic physicians in Federation medical techniques. Geordi LaForge worked with Republic engineers to integrate humanitarian technology while carefully avoiding military applications. Commander Riker found himself negotiating treaties between worlds that had been enemies weeks before. And Data, the android who existed outside the Force, became an unexpected philosopher, teaching Jedi younglings that wisdom could exist without mystical guidance, that choice and ethics were not dependent on midi-chlorian counts. Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala had twins, Luke and Leia, born in a galaxy that was learning to be free. Anakin, who had come so close to falling to the dark side, became a teacher, showing young Jedi that acknowledging fear and emotion didn't mean surrendering to them. Padme continued in the Senate, leading the effort to transform the Republic into something the Federation might recognize, a democracy that protected individual rights while serving collective good. And Captain Jean-Luc Picard stood on the Enterprise's observation deck, watching Coruscant turn below, still wrestling with questions that had no easy answers. They had saved this galaxy from tyranny. They had also changed it in ways that couldn't be undone. The Prime Directive lay in ruins, but the principles behind it, respect for other cultures, humility about one's own rightness, caution about imposing values, remained valid even in violation. "Captain," Counselor Troy said, joining him at the window, "you're still troubled." "We made choices for an entire galaxy, Counselor. Choices that resulted in thousands of deaths we couldn't prevent. Choices that fundamentally altered their development. How can I not be troubled?" "Because the alternative was worse," Troy said simply. "Palpatine would have succeeded. The Jedi would be extinct. The Republic would be an empire built on slavery and fear. Yes, we interfered. But we interfered on the side of freedom, choice, and life. That matters." Picard nodded slowly. "Perhaps you're right. Or perhaps we're simply telling ourselves that to justify what we've done. Either way, we can't undo it. We can only move forward, trying to do better, learning from our mistakes. Which is all any of us can do." Yoda's voice came from the doorway. The ancient Jedi hobbled in, his cane tapping against the deck. "Changed our galaxy, you have, Captain Picard. But perhaps needed that change, we did. Stagnant, the Jedi had become. Certain of our rightness. Blind to our failures. You forced us to see clearly. Painful, that sight was. But necessary. Master Yoda, your order paid a terrible price for our intervention." "Paid a price, we did," Yoda agreed. "But extinction, the alternative was. 7,000 Jedi died. But 1,300 live. Rebuild, we can. Learn, we will. Grateful, I am, for your interference, for your questions, for your stubborn refusal to accept destiny as excuse for inaction." The ancient master moved to the window, looking out at his home world with eyes that had witnessed 9 centuries of history. "The Force brought you here, Captain. Of this, certain I am. Not as masters, not as conquerors, but as teachers. Showed us that life exists beyond the Force. That choice matters more than prophecy. That technology and mysticism, science and the Force, reason and destiny, all are threads in the greater tapestry. Alone, each is incomplete. Together, they reveal truth." Picard felt the weight of those words. They had come to this galaxy by accident, stranded and confused. They had violated every principle of non-interference. They had made choices with consequences that would ripple through generations. But perhaps, just perhaps, those choices had served something larger than principle. Perhaps they had served life itself. Master Yoda, Picard said quietly, what happens now? The Enterprise remains stranded. Our crew cannot return home. We exist outside your force, permanent outsiders in a galaxy that's not ours. What role do we play in your future? Yoda smiled, a genuine expression of hope that Picard hadn't seen since their first meeting. Play the role you have always played, Captain. Explore. Question. Seek truth. Challenge assumptions. And when darkness rises again, for rise it will, always it does, stand with us. Not as saviors. Not as conquerors. But as friends who chose, freely and without destiny's guidance, to defend light against darkness. In the Senate chamber, Bail Organa called for a vote on the new Republic Charter, a document that incorporated Federation principles of individual rights, democratic governance, and protection for sentient beings regardless of origin. It passed overwhelmingly, transforming the Galactic Republic into something new, something that honored its past while learning from its failures. In the Jedi Temple, rebuilt from Order 66's ashes, younglings trained in forms that combined traditional lightsaber techniques with Federation principles of ethical decision-making. They learned that the Force was a guide, not a master. That prophecy was possibility, not inevitability. That their choices mattered more than any destiny. In medical facilities across the galaxy, Dr. Crusher's techniques saved lives that war would have claimed. In engineering bays, Geordi's innovations powered reconstruction. In diplomatic chambers, Riker's negotiations healed divisions that had festered for decades. And on the bridge of the USS Enterprise, Captain Jean-Luc Picard sat in his command chair, looking at stars that would never lead him home, surrounded by a crew that had become family in a galaxy that had become their responsibility. Captain, Data reported, we are receiving a distress signal from the Outer Rim. A colony world is under attack by remnant separatist forces. They are requesting assistance. Picard didn't hesitate. Lay in a course. Maximum impulse. And contact the Jedi Temple, let them know we'll need backup. Riker smiled. You know, Captain, for someone who spent so much time defending the Prime Directive, you've adapted remarkably well to active intervention. The Prime Directive, Picard replied, was designed to prevent harm. But we learned, painfully, that sometimes preventing harm requires action, not neutrality. We can't change the fact that we're here, number one. We can only choose what we do with that reality. The Enterprise turned, its impulse engines flaring as it accelerated toward the Outer Rim. Behind it, Coruscant glittered like a jewel, a civilization saved from darkness, transformed by contact with beings from beyond the stars, learning to build a future where destiny and choice, the Force and science, mysticism and reason could coexist. The galaxy far, far away had changed. The USS Enterprise had changed. And though the path home remained unknown, perhaps home was no longer the point. Perhaps home was where you chose to stand, where you decided to make a difference, where you fought for principles that transcended any single galaxy's boundaries. The Force would guide the Jedi. Science would guide the Federation. And together, they would face whatever darkness the future held, not as outsiders and natives, but as allies who had learned that the universe was vast enough for many truths, many paths, many ways of understanding what it meant to be good in a cosmos that often rewarded darkness. Captain Jean-Luc Picard had come to this galaxy seeking knowledge. What he'd found was purpose. And in the end, that was worth more than any journey home could ever be. The Enterprise disappeared into the stars, carrying hope for a galaxy that had very nearly lost it forever. And in the Force itself, in that mystical energy field that bound all living things, something shifted. Not a disturbance, but a harmony. A balance achieved not through prophecy or destiny, but through choice. Through beings who'd had every reason to look away, to maintain neutrality, to let history unfold without interference. But who had chosen, instead, to care. And that choice had made all the difference.